Chapter 93. Chapter 93. Convinced? In the field of alchemy, if the quality of a completed pill reached the standard requirements, it would be graded as 10 stars. If the quality exceeded normal standards, it would be graded as 11 or 12 stars. Normally, the quality would not exceed 12 stars. If the quality of the completed pill was below normal standards, it would be given a grade from 1 to 9 stars, and any pill with less than 1 star would be considered as junk, absolutely unusable. Hiss, even if I were concocting low-grade alchemical pills, my best record was only 12 stars. Fu Yuansheng exclaimed in shock. Li Si-chan's face was filled with absolute disbelief. She could already be considered a genius of alchemy herself, or she would not have been taken in by Wu Songlin as his personally taught disciple. Yet the majority of the completed pills that she has managed to concoct would be 10 stars, barely acceptable. A small portion of her completed pills would be 9 stars or 11 stars. Moreover, the storm pill could be considered to be one of the hardest to concoct pills among yellow-grade mid-level pills. Just take her as an example. She had already practiced concocting the storm pill for a month, yet every time, her efforts would only result in the furnace exploding. You can see how high the difficulty level of concocting this pill was. Such a pill, as long as it was completed, it would be considered a success. Even if it was only graded 3 or 4 stars, this kind of pill would still have a large market of customers willing to buy it. 13 stars, that was the kind of pill over which people would go to war. This guy really had not been bragging. He had really concocted the storm pill, and the quality of the completed pill was even higher than Wu Songlin's own. The storm pills that Wu Songlin himself concocted were only graded at 8 stars, or his record best, 9 stars. Could it be that her master had really made a mistake? Young man, young man. Wu Songlin's eyes were bright and shining. This expression had a close degree of similarity with Hun Niu. In an instant, he had scuttled over to Ling Han, held onto his hand and said, "Were you using the 3-fire guide earlier?" Ling Han nodded. Wu Songlin and Fu Yuansheng both sucked in a breath of cold air. This was something that had been considered a myth among myths. What did a young man that knew how to use the 3-fire guide signify? Young man, accept me as your master, and I can guarantee you will become an earth-grade alchemist at the very least. Wu Songlin said immediately. Hearing these words from him, Fu Yuansheng instantly understood that Ling Han had no relations to Wu Songlin. He quickly squeezed himself into the fray and said, "No, no, no. Take me as your master. I am the pavilion master of Rain Country's Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, and I've got uncountable resources in my hands. You can concoct any pill you like." Nonsense. Old man Fu, you have to understand. This is the territory of my Hu Yang Academy. Are you trying to snatch my disciples away from me? Wu Songlin was instantly enraged. This young man was obviously a genius of alchemy that could never be encountered within 1,000 years. Just take a look at that storm pill, and you'll know that's 13 stars. This was practically without precedent. What do you mean by snatching your disciples away from you? You don't even know the name of this young man, and you dare to say he's your disciple? Fu Yuansheng snorted. He turned back round, all smiles again. "Young man, what's your name?" Li Si-chan was completely struck dumb with shock. These two men were the best alchemists in the whole of Rain Country. Whichever one of them announced they intended to accept disciples, it was absolutely guaranteed that there would be a queue of people all the way from the east gate to the west gate of the imperial city. But now, these two men were actually fighting with each other over who gets to accept Ling Han as a disciple, and were even about to come to blows over the matter. How could this not astonish her? Moreover, she was even a little jealous. "I am Ling Han said. "I am one of the new students that is entering Hu Yang Academy this year. Did you hear that? This is a disciple of my department." Wu Songlin said proudly, and waved his hand a few times at Fu Yuansheng. "I don't have the time to share a drink with you today, so you'd best hurry back to your Heaven's Medicine Pavilion." So what if he's a student of your Hu Yang Academy? That doesn't conflict with him accepting me as his master. Fu Yuansheng was completely indifferent and continued to say to Ling Han, "Young man, what do you say? This is my disciple. Old man Fu, are you going to fight with me over him?" Wusong Lin said in a thunderous rage. For such a disciple, I'm definitely willing to fight. Fu Yuansheng said, not to be outdone. You're going to ignore our friendship of so many years? Pei, you're the one who's so insistent on fighting with me. Neither of the two old men was intending to back down, and from the looks of it, they were moments away from fighting with each other. Master, the both of you can accept him as your joint disciple. Li Sichan interrupted. That's right. The two old men paused at the same time. Why hadn't they thought of such a simple solution? The two of them turned to look at Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I think that the both of you might not be able to teach me anything. What arrogance. Li Sichan's small mouth was wide open in shock. Who were Wusong Lin and Fu Yuansheng? They were the two strongest alchemists in Rain Country, and they couldn't teach him anything? Even though you've managed to concoct a storm pill worth 13 stars, the storm pill is only a yellow-grade mid-level pill after all. Wusong Lin and Fu Yuansheng both looked displeased. This young man was a genius, but he was really too arrogant. Such a person may possibly shine for a moment, but definitely would not achieve too much. Ling Han smiled and said, the two of you, we can discuss our theories with each other and learn from one another. Saying such words was really him being extremely modest and humble. As someone who had once been the alchemy emperor, putting aside that these two men were only black-grade high-level alchemists, even earth-grade high-level alchemists were only qualified to stand quietly and listen respectfully to his words in front of him. Yet Wusong Lin and Fu Yuansheng did not know that, so the displeasure on their faces deepened even further. Ling Han pretended he had not seen anything and casually began to speak. Most of what he said was only common knowledge of alchemy. Though his cultivation level had decreased by much, and there was no way he was able to concoct high-grade alchemical pills, but if you were talking about theoretical knowledge, who would be able to match him? The two alchemists had been initially indifferent, but then they gradually became serious. Occasionally, they would offer their own opinions, but as the discussion continued, they had transformed into the learning side and continued to ask Ling Han about some difficult problems they had encountered in alchemy. Li Sichan watched all this happen from the side. She had long been shocked to numbness. This young man was obviously even younger than herself, yet how was it that he had such shocking understanding and comprehension in the field of alchemy? If one did not see his appearance and did not hear his voice, anyone would think that this was an elderly alchemist. She too possessed a terrifying talent in the field of alchemy, which was why she had been accepted by Wusong Lin as his personal disciple. Moreover, she was also extremely beautiful, and together with Lu Yutong, the both of them were called the twin pearls of the imperial city. The number of people who were interested in pursuing and wooing her would be enough to form a queue that could encircle the imperial city. But when you compared the two of them, she was practically like an alchemist's apprentice that had not even yet been formally taught. As she listened, the admiration she felt for Ling Han grew even stronger. She could not help sighing. There were indeed geniuses in this world. If that was not true, how was it possible that someone at such a young age had already surpassed her master? Indeed, there is no age restriction for learning. Whoever has the ability deserves to be called a teacher. Fu Yuansheng was the first to exhale. I had initially thought that young friend was too arrogant and proud, yet never thought that the one who was too arrogant and proud was myself. Young friend's level of comprehension in alchemy has already far surpassed the both of us, and in future, you'd definitely be able to become an earth-grade alchemist, or even a heaven-grade alchemist. After I've heard these words from you, I feel as if the grand door to earth-grade alchemy has opened for me, and once I manage to fully comprehend your views, I'd definitely be able to advance into the ranks of earth-grade. Wusong Lin sighed as well. He stood, bowed for a long while to Ling Han, and said, "Many thanks, young friend." "Many thanks, young friend." Fu Yuansheng had also stood and bowed towards Ling Han. Li Sichan was completely numb with shock. Because of the unique status accorded to alchemists, these two men could be considered as possessing the highest status and were only below the emperor in rank. Yet now, they actually both bowed to a youngster. This was a special treatment that not even the emperor of Rain Country could enjoy. If this news spread out, probably no one would believe it, right? Chapter 94. Chapter 94. Fighting to take in. Ling Han accepted their bows of respect without an ounce of guilt. Previously, he had indeed been teaching these two men. With these teachings from him, it was very likely that these two men had gained a chance to advance to each become an Earth-grade alchemist. Otherwise, they couldn't even dream of achieving such heights within this lifetime. He could be considered as half the master of these two men. As a result, it was only right for him to receive a bow of respect from these two men. If young Master Han has any problems in future, please do come to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion to seek me out, Fu Yuansheng said solemnly. He did not dare to address Ling Han as young friend any longer. Wu Songlin did not say anything along these lines. After all, Ling Han was a disciple of Huyang Academy, so he could see Ling Han at any time that he liked. He would of course not allow Ling Han to suffer any grievances in his territory. Ling Han smiled softly. He was not the type of person to selflessly offer gifts. The reason why he had taught these two men was because of their high status, and thus, he would have gained two powerful supporters in the imperial city, so he would have fewer qualms when doing certain things in this city. Fu Yuansheng excused himself and departed. A lot of the difficult problems in the field of alchemy that had been troubling him had been solved, so he needed to immediately return to digest this new knowledge and completely transform it into his own understanding and comprehension. Old man Wu, return my disciple quickly. It was at this very moment that an old man barged in, while the teacher in charge of enrollment followed behind. Needless to say, this was one of the headmasters of Huyang Academy, Lian Guangzhu. What, your disciple? Wu Songlin immediately glared at this intruder. This is obviously a disciple of our alchemy department. When did he become a disciple of your martial arts department? Huyang Academy was actually divided into two departments, the martial arts department and alchemy department. However, because there were indeed too few alchemists, when people talked about the Huyang Academy, they were actually referring to the martial arts department. In Wu Songlin's opinion, Ling Han's level of comprehension and understanding of alchemy was at quite scary heights, and his theoretical knowledge of the field was even deeper than his own. Then, naturally, he should be enrolled into the alchemy department and concentrate his efforts on concocting alchemical pills, advancing step by step to the top of the field. Nonsense. This brat's battle prowess is outstanding, so of course he belongs to our martial department, and you actually plan to have him learn how to concoct alchemical pills. This is practically leading him astray. Lian Guangzhu was furious. He took great strides and was soon in front of Wu Songlin, pointing a finger at the latter while being so close that his finger was almost at the tip of Wu Songlin's nose. You're the one talking nonsense. This brat's understanding of alchemy is so high that there has practically been no precedent. To have him practice martial arts is the greatest waste of talent. Wu Songlin, not to be outdone, also pointed a finger at Lian Guangzhu's face. Old man Wu, I'm warning you, don't point your finger at my face. Lian Guangzhu threatened. You were the one who pointed your finger at me first. Wu Songlin humphed. Withdraw your finger first. Pei, you take it back first. You first. If you added the age of each of these two old men, it would exceed 150 years old. These two old men completely looked like two stubborn bulls, glaring so intensely at each other that their eyeballs seemed to be in danger of popping out from their eye sockets. Li Si-chan could not stop herself from pressing a hand to her forehead. Lian Guangzhu and Wu Songlin had actually been friends for many years. Yet these two old men had always been way too prone to arguing with each other. They'd be shouting and pointing their fingers at each other for each small issue, as if they were two mortal enemies. As for the teacher in charge of enrollment, he was completely dumbstruck by this scene. He knew that Ling Han was exceptionally talented, with outstanding battle prowess for someone his age. But to actually cause these two headmasters to almost come to blows just to have him enroll in their own department, this was something that he had never imagined would happen. Hiss, wouldn't this brat be able to do as he liked in Huyang Academy in the future? No, no, no. With these two headmasters watching over him, he'd even be able to do as he liked in the whole imperial city. You have to understand, These two men were not only powerful warriors of spiritual pedestal tier, they were also the headmasters of the academy and have taught uncountable numbers of elites, so their status was incomparably revered. Moreover, Wu Songlin also had the additional status of a black-grade high-level alchemist, so even the Emperor of Rain Country had to address him respectfully as Grandmaster when they met. The teacher in charge of enrollment could not help becoming so envious that his eyes had turned red. Fine, I will not lower myself to your level, but this brat is a disciple of my martial arts department, so I'm going to take him back. Lian Guangzhu grabbed hold of Ling Han's shoulder. Nonsense, this is the future star of my alchemy department, and he is going to be the hope of the entire field of alchemy. How could I allow you to waste his talent like that? Wu Songlin quickly held onto Ling Han's other shoulder. Let go. You let go. The two old men each tugged at one shoulder, both intending to pull Ling Han to their side. However, they did not dare to put too much strength into it, so as to avoid directly tearing Ling Han into halves. They could only glare furiously at each other and gasp continuously in exertion. These two men were extraordinarily outstanding individuals that could cause the entire Rain Country to tremble with a few stomps of their feet, and now they were actually about to come to blows as they fought over a young man. Who would believe that such a thing could be possible? Li Si-chan was flushing in embarrassment. These two old men really did not act their own age. They were so old already, and yet they still liked to bicker with each other like two little kids. Meanwhile, Hunyo gave a loud burp. She had really enjoyed her meal. Young Master Han, just say the word. Are you going to learn martial arts from this old man, or enter our alchemy department and join us in researching alchemy? Wu Songlin asked. He did not want to have this genius of alchemy take a misstep in life. Don't be afraid of this old man, just tell him the truth. Don't you want to learn martial arts? Lian Guangzhu hurriedly said. Due to his agitated state, he had not noticed that Wu Songlin had used the respectful address of Young Master Han. Young Master Han, if you agree to enroll in the alchemy department, I will immediately give you 1,000 academic points. Wu Songlin gave him a very sincere offer in exchange for his agreement. What? Li Si-chan and the teacher in charge of enrollment were both dumbstruck with shock. 1,000 academic points. Within the Hu Yang Academy, academic points could be exchanged for a multitude of various items, cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, alchemical pills, as well as various natural treasures. But it was very difficult to obtain academic points. Even a genius like Liu Yutong may not have accumulated 1,000 points altogether throughout the years she spent in the academy. Hey, old man Wu, you can't just simply give out academic points any which way you like. Rewarding with academic points is very strictly regulated, and you're not exempted from the rules. Lian Guangzhu hurriedly spoke. Hey, do you think I'm that kind of man? Wu Songlin said proudly. Young Master Han has just completed the recovery of the storm pill. Does such a beneficial contribution not deserve a mere 1,000 academic points? What? Lian Guangzhu gasped quickly. Hadn't you recovered the storm pill a long time ago? The pill formula I recovered could only produce a pill of 8 stars, yet the pill that this young friend had just concocted managed to reach 13 stars. Wu Songlin said extremely proudly, as if he was the one who had accomplished such a magnificent feat. Lian Guangzhu could not help but begin to feel as if he should concede, but then he immediately recalled Ling Han's extraordinary talent in martial arts, reaching the fifth layer of element gathering tier at the young age of 17. Moreover, at the mere level of the 4th layer of element gathering tier, he managed to defeat Qi Yongyi. Such a talented genius of martial arts, what was he going to learn if not martial arts? But the problem was, Ling Han had not yet made any significant contribution in the name of the martial arts department, so he could not really afford to reward Ling Han with any academic points. The old man began to sweat uncontrollably due to his anxiety. At this moment, Ling Han finally spoke. I'll just learn from both departments. He was the alchemy emperor, so if he casually offered some long-lost ancient pill formulae, he'd be able to get a huge pile of academic points. He would of course not surrender such an easy and attractive opportunity. Moreover, he did not intend to resume his old path of alchemy, and would be concentrating the majority of his efforts on the path of martial arts. The two old men looked at him doubtfully. After all, whether it was the field of martial arts or the field of alchemy, both were wide-ranging and profound fields of knowledge. Even if one spent his whole lifetime, it was practically impossible for him to reach the top of the field. What more to simultaneously practice in both fields? I'm a genius, so there won't be any problems, Ling Han said confidently. Li Si-chan had half opened her mouth in shock. She was astonished by the level of shamelessness Ling Han could go to. How could someone praise himself to such an extent? But then she recalled Ling Han's previous performance. Even two black-grade, high-level alchemists ignored their pride to seek his teachings. There indeed does not seem to be much problems with regards to the field of alchemy. There really won't be any problems? The two old men asked in unison. Definitely no problem, Ling Han said with a smile. Chapter 95. Chapter 95. Looking for a teacher. All right then. The two old men nodded at the same time. They had been friends for many years after all. While they had previously argued quite vigorously, neither wanted to damage the harmony between them, so this was an appropriate solution to the problem. Here, this is the plaque for my alchemy department. Just hold on to this, and you'd be able to freely enter the alchemy department. Wu Songlin handed an iron plaque over to Ling Han. Old man Wu, this brat just arrived to the academy to report today, so I'm going to take him to the martial arts department to register first, then make arrangements for his accommodation, Lien Guangzhu said, tugging on Ling Han, and left quickly. Lien Guangzhu dragged Ling Han off for a very considerable distance before finally stopping. When he asked the teacher in charge of enrollment, "Why had you let this brat run off to old man Wu's?" The teacher felt very wronged. How could he have known that Ling Han loved to run around so much? He had just barely been gone for a while, and when he returned, Ling Han had disappeared. Yet he dared not argue with the headmaster, and could only lower his head humbly and admit his fault. Thankfully, Lien Guangzhu only wanted to vent some of his displeasure, and was not really blaming him. Good brat. He had defeated Qi Yongyi at the mere level of 4th layer of element gathering tier. He should have about 12 battle stars, a whole 8 stars more than what he should have at his current cultivation level. Not even that brat, Kan Yi, would be able to match this kind of talent. Lien Guangzhu murmured, his eyes bright. Such a genius of martial arts, how could he waste his time on concocting alchemical pills? If these words were heard by Wu Songlin, based on his understanding of Lien Guangzhu, he'd definitely be able to guess that the latter had come up with a wicked idea. You arrange for him to stay in a more remote location. Also, arrange for him to be taught by a teacher that has no disciples. You must not let old man Wu find him. He was indeed two-faced. The teacher in charge of enrollment could not help sweating, and nodded hesitatingly. This was the headmaster, so he definitely had to obey his words. But Wu Songlin was also the headmaster of the alchemy department, plus he was also a black-grade high-level alchemist. In Rain Country, his status was more or less right below the Emperor of Rain Country. If Wu Songlin really intended to rebuke him, would he be able to withstand the consequences? Lien Guangzhu, of course, understood the possible consequences, and so he said, "After you're done with this, take a vacation for half a year. You will still be paid your monthly salary during your vacation." The teacher in charge of enrollment heard this, and was instantly delighted. This not only allowed him to lie low until Wu Songlin calmed down, he could even be paid without working at all. This was naturally the best option for him. Which teacher would be the best? After Lien Guangzhu had left, the teacher in charge of enrollment thought furiously. I've got it. He smiled. Oldemo. Oldemo? Ling Han was carrying Hunyo with one arm, while his other hand was holding onto a light bundle that only contained a few changes of clothing. The teacher in charge of enrollment said, Old Mo's real name is Mo Gao. He also used to be a genius of our martial arts department, but later on, it was as if he had been possessed. He actually proclaimed that he wanted to create the ultimate sword arts technique in this world. The result was that his cultivation level stagnated, and he did not advance any further. If it was not for the fact that the headmaster sympathized with his talent and took him in as a teacher at the academy. But in any case, the headmaster intends to teach you personally, so you do not have to concern yourself with old Mo's cultivation level. Ling Han was led by the teacher to an extremely remote location. There were only a bare few courtyards here, and they were all in shambles. The wild grass by the side of the pathway had already reached the height of his waist, so it was likely that no one had lived here for a very long time. Pong, pong, pong. The teacher stepped forward to knock on the door. After quite some time, a voice finally came from within and said, "Who is it?" "Old Mo, it's me," the teacher said. From the looks of it, the two of them were quite familiar with each other. The door opened, and out walked a medium-sized man. He should have been less than 40 years old, but his whole face was covered with a beard and he looked extremely disheveled as he had not trimmed it in any way. It simply grew as it liked. Thus, appearance-wise, he appeared like a man who was in his 60s or 70s. "What is it? If there's nothing important, I have to go practice my sword techniques," the man said. He was obviously a Mo Gao. "I'm here to deliver a student to you." The teacher pointed at Ling Han and said, "His name is Ling Han. All right, I've delivered him successfully to you, so I'll take my leave." It was as if a fire had been lit under his behind. He immediately ran off, terrified that he would encounter Wu Songlin. In that case, he'd really be trapped between a rock and a hard place. Ling Han stared at Imogao, and Imogao also stared back at Ling Han. For a moment, neither of them opened their mouths to speak. After a while, Imogao finally nodded and said, "Since I'm a teacher here, I can't really decline an assignment given to me by the academy. In the future, you can just follow me to practice sword techniques." "All right." Ling Han was indifferent. "The few courtyards nearby are all empty. Just pick any which one to stay in." Imogao turned back round and returned to where he had come from. "I'll just leave this door open, and you can come in whenever you like. But it is strictly forbidden to disturb me when I'm practicing my sword techniques." Ling Han shrugged, and together with Hunyeo, went off in search of an appropriate place of accommodation. The courtyards here were all in shambles, with dust coating every surface. He chose a slightly better courtyard and began a cleaning campaign. The courtyard had to be habitable, right? Hunyeo too tried to give a hand, but naturally, she was more of a hindrance than of help. With a flop, bits of dust flew all around in the air, and her small face was transformed into the face of a little floret cat, causing Ling Han to laugh loudly in spite of himself. After busying themselves for over half a day, they had at least managed to completely tidy up a single room. Ling Han did not go immediately to seek out Lu Yutong, and trusted that she would take good care of Ling Zixin. "Anyone here?" A voice was heard from the doorway. Ling Han walked over to take a look, and there stood a young boy in his teens, who was pushing a small cart. There was a sack of rice, some meat, and vegetables on the cart. "Meat, meat, meat." Hunyo's eyes had immediately lit up. She took a leap and pounced over, scaring the young boy so much that he had fallen onto his behind on the ground. He was here to deliver the food rations. It looked like Ling Han would be preparing his own meals in the future. Ling Han smiled, walked over, and pulled the young boy up. He asked, "How many days is this food for?" 10 days, the young boy said. "After 10 days, I'll come back to deliver some more food." Ling Han shook his head and said, "This is not enough. There's only enough here for a single day." One day, the young boy was shocked, and his eyes swept over Ling Han in doubt. No matter how it was, he really could not see how it was possible that Ling Han would have such a huge appetite. "Never mind. Just deliver the food here. Money's no issue," Ling Han said, smiling. "The academy does not have any regulations on the daily amount of food, but are you guys sure you can finish eating so much?" The young boy was in disbelief. Ling Han did not bother to explain himself. In truth, the one with such a huge appetite was not himself, but Hunyeo. The young boy unloaded the food from the cart, and pushing the cart, he departed. Hunyeo immediately started to jump around Ling Han, looking very impatient. "Don't rush, it's not even night yet," Ling Han said with a laugh. Hunyeo was instantly displeased and pouted, baring her teeth at Ling Han. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, I won't be cooking today. We'll go and walk around the city. We'll have to buy new blankets and other essentials, as well as prepare a few more changes of clothing. After we're done shopping, we can go eat. Meat, 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 meat. Hearing the word eat, the little girl immediately began to jump around again, her earlier displeasure completely gone. Ling Han brought the little girl and went out. He had already applied for permission from Liang Guangzhu so that the girl could stay with him here. Otherwise, if she had to stay outside the academy grounds, Ling Han really had no idea who would be capable of caring for her. He held on to Hunyo's hand and walked to allow the girl to get used to walking with two legs and not keep thinking about walking around on all fours. Come see, Zhu Wujiu is challenging Nangongji. They hadn't even left the grounds of the academy before hearing this announcement from a student who appeared to be extremely excited. Chapter 96. Chapter 96, Silver Moon Race. Ling Han could not help feeling moved and followed at the heels of the advancing crowd. There were more and more people joining the crowd, and as they discussed the details about the battle between Zhu Wujiu and Nangongji, Ling Han very quickly came to understand the background of these two young men. Zhu Wujiu and Nangongji were both ordinary disciples of Huyang Academy, but Nangongji was ranked in the top 10 strongest ordinary disciples, and was an elite martial artist that was qualified enough to issue a challenge to the true disciples in a bid to join their ranks. Zhu Wujiu was slightly inferior to him, but ability-wise, he was definitely ranked within the top 20 ordinary disciples, so he was really not that bad. Why is Zhu Wujiu still so dead set on fighting with Nangongji? There's nothing to be done about it, who asked elder brother disciple Nangong to sacrifice elder sister disciple Han Wan to save his own life during their previous practical training trip. You've got to understand, elder sister disciple Han Wan was Zhu Wujiu's lover, so how could he not go crazy? I heard that elder sister disciple Han Wan actually died because of elder brother disciple Nangong. She had been injured by his sword, and that was why she had fallen behind and was forced into a life-and-death battle with the silvery light beast. That's how elder brother disciple Nangong managed to buy the time to flee with his life. Shu, how could you so openly speak of such things? Be careful that Nangongji won't make trouble for you later. He's the 5th young master of the Nangong clan, and his 3rd elder brother, Nangong Xing, is even a true disciple with the cultivation level of the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring tier. But Zhu Wujiu is indeed faithful. He obviously knows that the Nangong clan is not to be trifled with, yet he would still challenge Nangongji to a duel every year. Just last year, he was so heavily injured that he had almost lost his life. Never thought that he'd issue a challenge again this year. It's a pity that Zhu Wujiu is really not that talented. He only has an Earth-grade low-level spirit base, and he comes from a poor family, so he can't obtain any additional resources for his development. The gap between him and Nangongji would only become wider and wider. When Ling Han heard the people around him discussing the history between Zhu Wujiu and Nangongji, he could not help but feel slightly curious about this Zhu Wujiu. The crowd soon arrived at the martial training court of the academy, and they could see there was someone standing within, so the others very naturally did not step into the court. Sparring was an allowed practice of Huyang Academy, and as long as both sides of the battle agreed, they'd be able to carry out their battle in the martial training court. The doctrine was to be as merciful as possible, but even if the fighters did not manage to restrain themselves in time, they wouldn't be punished too harshly. After all, weapons were blind. However, if anyone dared to deliberately injure their opponent, the academy would hand out a very severe punishment. For example, if one of the fighters had already admitted defeat or fallen unconscious or had otherwise completely lost the ability to defend themselves yet their opponent continued to attack them, this would be considered a breach of the rules that'd be met with a severe punishment. Ling Han looked at the man that was standing in the martial training court. He seemed to be about 25 or 26 years old. He was a tall man who bore a long sword on his back. He could not really be considered handsome, but his gaze was very intimidating. Usually, others probably dared not look him directly in the eye. Why isn't Nangongji here yet? He's the one being challenged, so of course he has to put on some appropriate airs. I say, How many times has Zhu Wuju challenged Nangongji already? This should be the 5th time, right? That means that 4 years have passed. This guy's perseverance is really a scary thing. With each battle, he would be severely injured and close to death, yet he would still grit his teeth and survive regardless, making others can't help but admire his determination. While waiting, the crowd continued to talk among themselves. They were all expressing sympathy and admiration for Zhu Wujiu. The corners of Ling Han's lips turned up slightly into a grin as he thought, I never thought that I'd be able to encounter someone with a special constitution. His body is surrounded by ripples of faint, silvery light. Plus the others said that he did not die even after receiving a critical injury 4 times. Instead, he very quickly recovered. This person must be a member of the Silver Moon race. The Silver Moon race was born with the Silver Moon Constitution. This was a constitution that had powerful abilities of recovery, and their bodies themselves could be considered a divine healing pill. As a result, the numbers of this race were pitifully low. They had been hunted down and killed by others, concocted into alchemical pills. I had originally thought that after 10,000 years had passed, this race would have gone extinct. I never thought that I'd be able to encounter one of its members today. Fine, for the sake of the Silver Moon King, I'll give him a helping hand. 10,000 years ago, Ling Han entered the territory of the Silver Moon race to collect some medicinal ingredients. He was very cordially received by the leader of the Silver Moon race of the time, the Silver Moon King. Unfortunately, not long after that, the Silver Moon race was wiped out. Ling Han's cultivation level at that time was still too low, so there was nothing he could do to help. Later on, when he had joined the ranks of Heaven-tier cultivators, the culprits responsible for the obliteration of the Silver Moon race had all died of old age. This was one of Ling Han's regrets. Ha ha ha, Zhu Wujiu, how many times must you fail before you understand that you will never be a match for me? Meanwhile, a young man strode into the martial training court, a powerful aura emanating from his person. 9th layer of element gathering tier, and he was at the peak period. If he did not have such ability, how else could he have managed to secure his place among the top 10 strongest ordinary disciples? Compared to him, Zhu Wujiu was very much inferior, with a cultivation level of only the 7th layer of element gathering tier. Yet everyone knew that cultivation level did not represent one's battle prowess. Since Zhu Wujiu was able to rank among the top 20, it could be seen that his actual battle prowess far surpassed his own cultivation level. Speak less nonsense, make your move. Zhu Wujiu immediately drew out his sword and made a gesture with it. Nangongji's face was filled with arrogance. He too made a gesture, and this signified that both fighters had agreed to begin this battle. Zhu Wujiu rushed forwards, and as his sword swept in an arch, cold light danced about. Nangongji was completely indifferent to this. He was an elite in the top 10, and compared to him, what could a mere Zhu Wujiu count as? Ding, 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 ding. The two fighters were quickly embroiled in a fierce exchange of blows. Nangongji was very obviously having the upper hand in this battle. He looked very relaxed, and even managed to mock and ridicule his opponent as the battle went on to attack Zhu Wujiu's morale. However, in truth, in his heart concealed a deep dread towards Zhu Wujiu. In the previous 4 battles, he had acted to kill Zhu Wujiu. Though the latter would not die immediately, if the injury dragged on for another 2 or 3 days, he'd definitely die. And, based on Zhu Wujiu's family background, there was no way he'd be able to afford high-grade healing pills to heal his injuries. Yet this guy not only did not die, he recovered from his wounds without any kind of after-effects. After such miraculous recovery occurred 4 times, of course Nangongji would feel dread. He knew his own guilt, and Zhu Wujiu was the only person that had relations with Han Wan. So as long as Zhu Wujiu was still alive, he would continue to be uneasy. This may lead to the day of his breakthrough to gushing spring tier, coming so slowly it would seem like forever. As a result, he intended to be absolutely merciless today. He definitely had to kill Zhu Wujiu right on the spot today. Defeating and killing were 2 completely different issues. The difficulty level was completely different. Thus, if he wanted to kill Zhu Wujiu, Then he needed to create an opportunity wherein he could kill Zhu Wujiu in a single strike. After the battle, he'd be able to shift the blame away from himself by saying he had not managed to restrain himself in time. The two fighters continued to battle for a while, and Nangongji, with his much more superior ability, finally found an excellent opportunity. He stabbed with his sword, creating 3 flashes of cold light which headed directly for Zhu Wujiu's heart. This was not sword chi. He had just stabbed so quickly that he had created 2 afterimages. Earth-grade high-level martial arts technique, Shadow Dance Sword Arts. He spent all the academic points that he had saved up for this martial arts technique, just to prepare for today so that he could kill Zhu Wujiu. Die! He spat out in his mind as he used the strongest move of the Shadow Dance Sword Arts to form a merciless attack. Zhu Wujiu brandished his sword as well, and actually formed 2 flashes of cold light. Could it be that he was also using an extremely swift sword technique? No. Sword chi. The spectators all gasped in shock. This was sword chi, proof of a ruler. Pooh. Pooh. 2 spurts of blood appeared at the same time. Nangongji's sword had pierced Zhu Wujiu's stomach, while the sword chi that Zhu Wujiu had formed had drawn across Nangongji's throat, leaving behind a bloody wound. A cold light appeared in Nangongji's eyes. He immediately drew back his sword and gave another stab. He wanted to kill his opponent. Shua! Another flash of cold light drew over and an arch Ling Han acted, stepping forward with a wave of his sword. Chapter 97. Chapter 97. Imparting. With a ding, Nangongji was forced back by this strike. He glared furiously at Ling Han and said, "Who are you to dare to meddle in my affairs? Don't you know that interfering in a battle is a very serious offense?" Ling Han smiled softly and said, "He can no longer continue the battle, so this battle is already over. However, if you would like to have a spar with me, I don't mind teaching you a lesson." Nangongji glared angrily. Zhu Wujiu had actually managed to form a flash of sword chi, and now possessed the preliminary qualifications to step into the ranks of rulers. Zhu Wujiu may one day become a huge problem for him, and he had originally intended to finish him off completely today. He had never thought that their battle would be interrupted with Ling Han's interference. Brat, those who meddle too much in the affairs of others never have a good ending, he threatened. Now, it was no longer possible for him to kill Zhu Wujiu on the spot, so his heart was filled with furious rage. "You either battle with me now, or get lost. Don't babble so much," Ling Han said disdainfully. Nangongji looked very angered, yet in the end, he left in great strides with a wave of his hands. After feeling Ling Han's sword strike just now, he knew that the former was definitely not weaker than himself. Moreover, he was a cautious person and would never go into battle unprepared. Since he was no longer able to kill Zhu Wujiu, he simply chose to leave. However, judging from his character, this matter would not simply end like this. He would first investigate Ling Han's background thoroughly and then decide what was to be done. Who's this guy, actually daring to oppose Nangongji? Should be one of the new students this year, right? From the looks of his aura, he only seems to be in the 5th layer of element gathering tier, yet he actually managed to scare off Nangongji. It's really strange. However, the Nangong clan is not to be trifled with, and there's also Nangong Xing, who is a true disciple of the academy. Forget it, we'd better not get too close to him, or we'd be inviting trouble to ourselves. The spectators discussed spiritedly and very quickly departed from the martial training court. Zhu Wujiu slowly and painstakingly got up. The special constitution of the Silver Moon race was indeed impressive. He had recovered considerably after this short period of rest, even after receiving such a serious injury. Of course, this rate of recovery could not be compared to the healing effects of the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Firstly, the indestructible Heaven Scroll was too high level, and secondly, Zhu Wujiu himself was still too weak, and was unable to make full use of his special constitution's potential. "Why did you help me?" Zhu Wujiu spoke. "Aren't you afraid of getting in trouble with the Nangong clan? Can't it be that I helped you because I couldn't stand the injustice happening in front of me?" Ling Han said with a smile. I don't believe that there are still such naive people in this world. Zhu Wujie shook his head, but I live in poverty and you won't be able to get much from me, so I advise you not to waste your energy. Then, Ling Han thought for a moment, become my subordinate. For the aid you've provided me today, I will definitely pay you back for your kindness another day. Zhu Wujie turned around to leave, obviously unwilling to accept the offer of becoming Ling Han's subordinate. Those who managed to get into Huyang Academy were all geniuses, so how could they be willing to be under the command of someone else? Ling Han did not chase after him. Instead, he said calmly, "You don't want your revenge anymore?" Zhu Wujie's steps suddenly paused, and he slowed down. "I can teach you." Ling Han continued, "Within half a year, I will definitely be able to help you surpass Nangongji and take your revenge with your own hands." Zhu Wujie suddenly turned back round and said, "Really? You've already said that you live in poverty. What would I get from lying to you?" Ling Han said with a smile. Zhu Wujie hesitated for a moment and said, "All right, I agree to become your follower. If you are not able to help me surpass Nangongji within half a year, then this will be my payback for your help earlier. If you are able to, then my life will belong to you." This guy really was a loyal person. Still, becoming Ling Han's subordinate was an actual fact, not a bad thing to happen to him. Instead, this was an opportunity of epic proportions. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han had shared an amicable friendship with the Silver Moon King years ago, he'd definitely not be wasting so much of his effort. Ling Han nodded and said, "I'll impart to you a cultivation technique, and in the future, you have to switch to practicing this cultivation technique." He lowered his voice and imparted a cultivation technique to Zhu Wujie. It was called the Silver Moon Arts. That's right, this cultivation technique was created specifically for the Silver Moon race. Years ago, after the Silver Moon race had been wiped out, Ling Han, after achieving a high cultivation level, had once journeyed all over in search of the survivors of the Silver Moon race. He didn't find anyone, but he did find this most precious cultivation technique of the Silver Moon race, the Silver Moon Arts. He had an excellent memory. At the time, he had only flipped through the pages once and managed to memorize the entirety of it. Otherwise, he would not have been able to take it out now. The Silver Moon Arts, when used by a member of the Silver Moon race such as Zhu Wujie, would fully display the might of his special constitution. At least, it would allow him to increase his battle prowess by 1 star. Moreover, the Silver Moon Arts was an Earth-grade high-level technique, so it would be enough to help Zhu Wujie very quickly catch up to Nangongji in cultivation level. Silver Moon Constitution and Sword Qi. If these two strengths added together still did not allow Zhu Wujie to emerge victorious over Nangongji, then he was really too useless. Zhu Wujie did not know that this was an Earth-grade high-level cultivation technique, nor did he know that it would help him make full use of the benefits of his special constitution. After asking about Ling Han's name and address, he left in a daze. After all, he was still injured, so he did need to recover. Meat. Hunyo tugged on Ling Han's sleeve in displeasure. All right, let's go have some meat," Ling Han said with a laugh. Ling Han. Brother Ling. Ling Han heard someone shout his name from a distance, and when he looked over, it was 4 of his old friends from Duyuan City: Qi Yongyi, Jin Wuji, Bailey Tingyun, and Li Dongyu. Brother Ling came really late. "Today, you must punish yourself with drinking 3 cups of wine," Bailey Tingyun said. "How could 3 cups be enough? There should be at least 10 cups. Li Dongyu joined in on the banter. Meat. Hunyo jumped up and down. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Let's go. I'll treat you guys to a meal today, and if you're not drunk by the end of it, you can't leave." "Nobody's leaving if they're not drunk." Qi Yongyi and the others laughed. The group of 5 adults plus 1 child exited the academy, found a restaurant, and began their drinking spree. Yet Qi Yongyi and the others very quickly discovered gloomily that when a dish was served and there was meat in it, it would be instantly devoured by Hunyunet, even leaving any scraps behind. They then entered into the fierce battle for food, but if you were talking about eating, who would be able to snatch food faster than Hunyo? The little girl didn't even use chopsticks, and after using her bare hands to hold on to the food, How could the others find the desire to eat? This girl's stomach is a bottomless pit, right? Qi Yongyi and the others were all very curious, but not even Qi Yongyi recognized that the little girl in front of him was the one from the wrestling ring. After all, at that time, Hunyo was very disheveled and completely filthy, unlike how she was now. And now, while she was still very wild, she looked very pretty and dainty, like a little porcelain doll. I am really envious of Brother Ling. You're already a true disciple from the moment you enroll in the academy, and can get your hands on uncountable resources for cultivation, Li Dongyu said ruefully. Qi Yongyi nodded and said, there is really too much of a gap between true disciples and ordinary disciples. The gap between myself and Feng Yin hadn't really been very big, but now AI. Fourth Prince, no matter what, at least you still have the royal house of the Deyuan King supporting you, so you're already much better than the rest of us, Jin Wuji said immediately. That's right. The resources from the royal house of the Deyuan King are even more abundant than the resources of all our 4 great parties added together. If you're going to complain about being poor, how are we supposed to go on? Bailey Teng Yun called out. Ling Han, I heard you have some grudges with Feng Luo. He's also entered the academy now, so you have to be careful. He might ask Feng Yin to deal with you, Qi Yongyi said all of a sudden. Chapter 98. Chapter 98. Lick my shoes. Feng Yin? The corners of Ling Han's lips turned up into a smile, and he said, how powerful is he now? No one's really clear about exactly how powerful he is now, but the last time he returned to the academy, he was already in the 4th layer of Gushing Spring Tier. Plus, when someone saw him make a move in an ancient historical site, he had 4 flashes of saber qi, Qi Yongyi said solemnly. 4th layer of Gushing Spring Tier was even higher than Qin Ye's cultivation level. However, the change of core disciples was the same as the change of true disciples. It could only happen at the end of every year, whereupon challenges would be issued to determine who would be replaced and who would remain. Feng Yin most likely had just broken through. Moreover, cultivation level did not represent one's battle prowess. Qin Ye's battle prowess was at 7 stars, so Feng Yin had not issued challenges to Qin Yi, Zhao Huan, or Qi Feng Yun last month. Oh, right before I came, I received the news that the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion will be holding an auction tonight. Anyone interested to go take a look? Jin Wuji asked all of a sudden. Spiritual Treasures Pavilion? Ling Han asked curiously. That's an auction house of the Imperial City. The boss is enshrouded in mystery. According to rumors, nobody knows who he is, even if the boss is a man or a woman, nor whether he or she is old or young. However, he or she must definitely come from a very important background, because no one has ever dared to make trouble at Spiritual Treasures Pavilion, Jin Wuji explained. It's not that nobody dared to make trouble, it's that those who have made trouble before have all died. Thus, nobody dares to make trouble anymore, Qi Yongyi said. He could be considered as a member of the royal family, and so knew more than Jin Wuji. Interesting, then let's go have a look, Ling Han said with a smile. If he could obtain a few of the other necessary drugs to concoct the Restore Spirit pill at this auction house, then it wouldn't be too long before he could heal Ling Dongxing's spirit base. After he breaks through to Gushing Spring Tier, he'd be able to train his divine sense. The stronger his divine sense was, the higher the grade of alchemical pills he could concoct. But the temperature of the flames he could produce was still a problem, for the temperature could only be increased by advancing in cultivation level. No matter how skilled he was at controlling the heat of the flames, there was always a maximum limit to the temperature of the flame. Father's lifespan is limited, so this cannot be delayed for too long. He thought, either I find someone to help me concoct the pill, or I fuse my flames with the strange fires of heaven and earth. With the help of the strange fires, the temperature of the flames can be increased. However, the strange fires are much too rare. Even in my last life, I had never found a strange fire, but 10,000 years have passed, so perhaps my luck will change. The strange fires were a type of spiritual fire formed naturally by the environment. Should a martial artist refine a strange fire, he'd be able to increase his cultivation level, or form a special physical constitution. For alchemists, if they were able to fuse their flames with a strange fire, they'd be able to increase their alchemy skill. Years ago, there had been a relatively unknown alchemist who had happened to fuse his flames with one of the strange fires, and eventually became a world-famous grandmaster alchemist. If Ling Han wanted to concoct the Restore Spirit pill within a short period of time, then fusing his flames with a strange fire seemed to be his only option. The greatest alchemist in Rain Country was only at Black Grade high level, and was absolutely not qualified enough to concoct an Earth-grade alchemical pill. They had mostly finished eating, so they paid the bill and left, heading towards the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion to take part in the auction that would be held there. Because it was not too far away, they did not hail down a carriage, and instead simply went there on foot. About 20 minutes later, they had finally arrived at the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion. This was a place that was specifically meant for the sale of treasures. What would be considered a treasure? Weapons, cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, alchemical pills, and medicinal ingredients could all be considered treasures as long as they had a high enough value and could be sold here. There would be an auction held here every month to sell off some rarer, more valuable treasures, and every several months or years, there would be a large-scale auction which, according to rumors, would even move the hearts of the imperial family and the 8 great clans. The auction that would be held today was the monthly auction. As such, there weren't many powerful warriors among the participants, but there was indeed a lot of people. It was only held once a month, after all, so there was a lot of rare, precious treasures that were going to be auctioned off. They were just about to enter when they saw 2 young men walk towards them. These 2 young men were walking quite closely together, and from the looks of it, they had a very close relationship. It's you." When one of them saw Ling Han, his expression turned cold. He pointed a finger at Ling Han and said, "Ha ha ha, you stupid brat, you never thought this would happen, right? I still managed to enter into Hu Yang Academy, and I've even broken through to Element Gathering Tier." It was really too much of a coincidence. This guy was Feng Luo, but the fact that he had actually broken through to Element Gathering Tier was a bit unexpected. Based on his natural talent, he should not have been able to break through to Element Gathering Tier so quickly. However, in Ling Han's eyes, he was only a minor character, thus Ling Han did not take him to heart. He merely said calmly, "Remove your finger. If not, I do not mind breaking it for you." Feng Luo's face instantly looked enraged, but when he recalled Ling Han's battle prowess, he could not help fear creeping into his heart and withdrew his finger. Yet his mouth continued to say, "So what if you snatched away my place of enrollment into the academy? My brother still managed to help me enter the academy. Ling Han, let me tell you, don't think you can enjoy your days in the future. I will definitely destroy you." Feng Yin really did have his Weisto actually managed to procure a place of enrollment into Hu Yang Academy for his brother. Most likely, he was the same as Ling Dongxing and made some kind of deal with the academy. Otherwise, no matter how much of a genius you were, it was impossible for the academy to place so much importance on you that they'd freely gift you a place of enrollment into the academy. Ling Han laughed in spite of himself and said, "Idiots who dare to threaten me this way have never had good endings." "What big talk?" the young man beside Feng Luo said. His face was filled with arrogance exceeding even Feng Luo's, his nostrils raised so high they were about to point skywards. "I have seen quite a number of arrogant people in this imperial city, but someone like you, TSK, this is the first time." "Hee, Ling Han, do you know who this is?" Feng Luo asked proudly, and pointing at his companion, said, "This is Wei He Lu, young Master Wei, a rising star of the Hu Yang Academy, who would one day definitely become a black-grade alchemist." "So that is Wei He Lu." Jin Wuji gasped in surprise. "Is he very strong?" Bailey Tang Yun asked, "But he's only in the first layer of Element Gathering Tier, right?" The first layer of Element Gathering Tier. Even if he was a freak like Ling Han, it was absolutely useless. Against an opponent of the 9th layer of Element Gathering Tier, the only result would be being single-handedly dominated by his much stronger opponent. Bailey Tang Yun had just entered the Hu Yang Academy, so he did not know that there was an alchemy department and was unable to make head or tail of Jin Wuji's reaction. He is extremely talented in the field of alchemy and is already a yellow-grade high-level alchemist. Some say that even the headmaster of the alchemy department has the intention to take him in as his personal disciple, Jin Wuji said in awe. When he saw the incomprehension still on Bailey Tengyun and Li Dongyu's faces, he continued to explain and said, "The Hu Yang Academy is actually divided into two, which are the martial arts department and the alchemy department. The headmaster of the alchemy department is a black-grade high-level alchemist." Hiss. At this moment, Bailey Tengyun and Li Dongyu took a sharp breath as they finally came to understand the background of Wei He-lu. Black-grade high-level alchemist, even if Shu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan saw him, they would still have to treat him with utmost respect and address him as grandmaster. Ha 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 ha. Wei He-lu laughed loudly. He hadn't said anything just now to give them a chance to understand fully his background, which would allow him to show off to the greatest level. He regarded them with disdain and said, "I don't care what kind of grudges you guys have with young Master Luo, but since I have seen it today, then I'll act as the mediator." He paused for a moment, then said to Ling Han in a deep voice, "Kneel down and lick young Master Luo's shoes clean." Feng Luo was extremely proud of himself. Today, with Wei He-lu's support, if Ling Han did not submit, that would mean opposing Wei He-lu. Who was Wei He-lu? He was a yellow-grade high-level alchemist and could even possibly be taken by Wu Songlin as disciple, with endless future prospects ahead of him. Anyone with a working brain would definitely not dare to go against Wei He-lu. Today, he would be getting his payback, with interest. Chapter 99. Chapter 99. Thrash as usual. Shi Yongyi and the others looked absolutely furious at this. Asking him to kneel down and lick another's shoes, what kind of great humiliation was that? If this Wei He-lu was in gushing spring tier, or a black-grade alchemist, then perhaps he would be qualified to make such unreasonable demands. But he was only a yellow-grade low-level alchemist, a martial artist at the mere level of first layer of element gathering tier. How did he get the confidence to talk so big? The people who were born in the imperial city truly acted like they were superior to anyone and everyone else. "You've gone too far," Jin Wuji shouted immediately. "Wei He-lu, you're only a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist now. Don't you think you're talking too big? You dare to go against me?" Wei He-lu smiled coldly, looking extremely confident in himself. Indeed, he was only a yellow-grade low-level alchemist now, but his future prospects were limitless. Otherwise, why would Feng Luo go out of his way to deliberately befriend him? Of course, the reason why he had befriended Feng Luo was also because of Feng Yin. If not for Feng Yin, how would he have taken a mere martial artist of element gathering tier seriously? He possessed remarkable potential in the path of alchemy, while Feng Yin could possibly become a ruler in the field of martial arts. In this world, the strongest ruled after all. No matter how awesome an alchemist grew to be, he would still need the help of a powerful warrior proficient in martial arts. Jin Wuji instantly felt the urge to hit someone. Wei He-lu was only in the first layer of element gathering tier, and from the looks of it, he had only managed to climb to this cultivation level with the help of alchemical pills. Jin Wuji would be able to easily dominate him with one hand behind his back. Furthermore, his status as a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist did not worry him at all, as there was no way that there would come a day that Jin Wuji would make any requests of an alchemist of this lowly rank. The problem was that there was a high chance that Wei He-lu may be taken in as disciple by Wu Songlin, and Wu Songlin was a black-grade high-level alchemist. Previously, they had all done Ling Han a favor by throwing their respective matches into Yuan City because there stood two black-grade low-level alchemists behind him. However, Wu Songlin was a much grander figure than those two, so the pressure they felt was obvious. Jin Wuji's expression turned dark and cold, yet he did not open his mouth to speak. "What right do you have to be so arrogant?" Bailey Tingyun was in the prime of his youth, and so was easily moved by his emotions. He was also aware that he was a citizen of Yuan City, so even if this Wei He-lu would one day become a black-grade alchemist, it would not affect him whatsoever. As a result, he naturally held no fear of offending Wei He-lu. Wei He-lu could not help showing displeasure at this and said, "Are you challenging me? So what if I am? Do you dare to battle with me?" Bailey Tingyun said arrogantly. "Young Master Wei." It was at this moment that another three young men joined them. These three newcomers all had a powerful aura radiating from them. They had all reached the 9th layer of element gathering tier. So it's you guys. Wei Hila spared a glance at them, and a faint, perfunctory smile appeared on his face. Young Master Wei, have you encountered some kind of trouble? One of them said with a smile. The speaker was dressed in green battle robes and was quite tall. Wei Hilu revealed a disdainful smile, pointed at Bailey Tingyun, and said, "This guy says he wants to challenge me. Ha 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 ha. Where did this idiot come from, to actually dare to challenge young Master Wei?" The green-clad man laughed loudly. He crooked a finger in Bailey Tingyun's direction and said, "Come, come, come. I shall be your opponent." How could Bailey Tingyun not react to such provocation? He was just about to agree when Qi Yongyi held him back and said, "Wen Haixing, when did you become so immature? An elite ranked among the top 100 actually intends to bully a junior that had just barely enrolled in the academy. So it's the king of eternal night." The green-clad man behaved as if he had just noticed Qi Yongyi raised his clasped hands in the latter's direction and said, "No wonder you dare to oppose young Master Wei. The 4th prince of Diyuan City is indeed domineering." His words appeared to be praising Qi Yongyi, but in reality, they were an attempt to direct aggression to the latter. Wei Hili's expression immediately darkened, and he said, "So you are a noble. No wonder you are so arrogant." Since he was a child, he had already displayed outstanding talent in the field of alchemy. Everyone in his age range tried to curry his favor in order to form an amicable relationship with the great alchemist-to-be he was. Wen Haixing's words naturally caused him to feel very displeased about Qi Yongyi's actions. "Ling Han, are you going to kneel or not?" Feng Luo interrupted. The person he hated the most was naturally Ling Han, and Qi Yongyi was the 4th prince of Diyuan City and was highly likely to inherit the position of Diyuan king in the future, so naturally Feng Luo was not willing to offend him. "So this is the younger brother of elder brother disciple Feng Yan." When Wen Haixing and his companions found out Feng Luo's identity, they all smiled immediately. Though they themselves looked down upon Feng Luo, they dared not show any disdain towards him in public. Feng Yan was too strong, and according to rumors, had the ability to challenge and join the ranks of the core disciples. One of them immediately looked towards Ling Han and said, "Brat, Shin Yuxian, am just going to say this now. If you are unable to make younger brother disciple Feng Luo satisfied, then you will only be sent back to the academy on a stretcher." Mi Zhongguang, am the same," the third person said. Feng Luo was extremely proud. He laughed loudly and said, "Ling Han, do you still dare to be so unreasonable with me? Who do you think you are, to dare to put on airs in front of me? You've humiliated me repeatedly. Who do you think I am? One single finger of mine is more precious than the whole you by 10,000-fold." Wei Hilu and the others smiled coldly. A mere foreign new student would naturally not be taken seriously by them. The only people they would have misgivings about going against were only the direct heirs of the 8 great clans. Outside the entrance, the 4 guards of the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion looked on with indifference. As long as no one was making trouble in the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion, then even if the sky collapsed, they would not interfere. "Kneel!" Feng Luo roared loudly. "Kneel your sister!" Ling Han reached out with his hand, which sped towards Feng Luo. "How dare you!" Wen Haixing, Mi Zhongguang, and Shen Yuxian all acted at the same time. They were all in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, and were extremely strong. None of them was inferior to Qi Yongyi. The simultaneous movement of all 3 was terrifyingly powerful. "Get out of my way!" Ling Han, using the exiting cloud steps, actually managed to squeeze past the restraining movements of all 3 of them. Wen Haixing and the others were all shocked. They'd noticed that Ling Han was only in the 5th layer of element gathering tier, and so completely did not take him seriously. Who would have thought that Ling Han was actually so fast and had such a weird way of moving? As a result, they had not used their full power, allowing Ling Han to easily break through their siege. Ling Han had already appeared in front of Feng Luo, and his extended hand was already reaching towards the latter. "You dare!" Wei He slanted his body to one side to stand in front of Feng Luo. He was well aware that he was a yellow-grade low-level alchemist, and was possibly the future disciple of the headmaster of the alchemy department. So no matter how bold Ling Han was, he knew that Ling Han would not dare to touch a single hair on his head. Pa! However, his thoughts had just barely formed when a forceful slap from Ling Han smacked him out of the way. Damn, this guy really dared to hit him. Another slap from Ling Han caused Feng Luo to fall to the ground. Without waiting for him to get up, one of Ling Han's feet stepped very firmly on Feng Luo's face. Bastard, you actually dare to step on me? You are definitely tired of living. My brother will definitely kill you. Definitely. Feng Luo wailed terribly while continuing to threaten Ling Han. Indeed, only a profligate, spoiled young master like him dared to issue such threats in public. What kind of place was the Imperial City? Here, murder was a heavily punished crime. At the side, Wei He face was also filled with fury. He had actually been slapped away by someone? This was too insolent, too detestable. He will definitely not spare this reckless fool. Younger brother disciple Wei? It was at this moment that a young man and woman walked over. When the maiden clearly saw Wei He's face, she revealed a surprised expression. Elder sister disciple Li. Wei He hurriedly got to his feet. His hands remained lowered at his sides, looking extremely respectful. This young maiden was Li Xichan. In front of others, Wei He could put on an extremely arrogant attitude, but in front of Li Xichan, he could only obediently withdraw all his prideful obnoxiousness, because Li Xichan's talent in alchemy was far above his own. Wu Songlin favored only his talent, but Li Xichan was truly his most favorite disciple. Even if he really did become Wu Songlin's disciple, he'd still have to treat Li Xichan with utmost respect. Chapter 100. Chapter 100. Intimidated. The young man that had walked in together with Li Xichan revealed an angered expression. Who dares to be so bold as to disrespect an alchemist? It's he Junshan. Qi Yongye's brow immediately frowned. A true disciple, second layer of gushing spring tear. He had not spoken in a low voice, as he was trying to forewarn Ling Han of this formidable newcomer. Wei He, on the other hand, smiled. With an elite in the second layer of gushing spring tear as his support, then no matter how strong Ling Han was, it wasn't possible for him to turn this situation around. He said, Big brother this brat is too arrogant. He bullied elder brother disciple Feng Yan's younger brother, Feng Luo, first, and because I couldn't simply do nothing, I said a few words of justice. And he reacted by slapping me down to the ground. Oh, then I would really like to see who is so awesome, He Junshan said coldly. Ling Han. Li Xichan had finally spotted Ling Han now, and could not help but walk forwards a few steps. She said, Where are you staying now? I've been looking for you everywhere. Hiss. What was the relationship between these two people? Hearing Li Xichan's words, everyone could not help but feel curious. Could it be that maybe they? He Junshan's expression instantly darkened. He was one of Li Xichan's admirers, and now his dream girl actually uttered words with such ambiguous meaning, causing him to instantly feel as bad as if he had swallowed a fly. No, no, no. My master is the one looking for you. Li Xichan hurriedly corrected her words, sensing the awkward ambiguousness of what she had said. Oh, what's your master looking for me for? Ling Han asked very nonchalantly. Master would like to invite you to tea. Who? Practically everyone choked out of astonishment. Who was Li Xichan's master? Wu Songlin. And who was Wu Songlin? A black-grade high-level alchemist, the headmaster of the alchemy department, and an ultra-big, extremely important person that could practically cause the whole of Rain Country to tremble with a few stomps of his feet. Such a major character actually wanted to invite Ling Han to tea. Hiss, how many people were actually able to have the honor of having tea together with Wu Songlin? The clan heads of the 8 great clans, the pavilion master of Heaven's medicine pavilion, the headmaster of the martial arts department, probably just these few people, right? But this was Ling Han, an extremely minor character that had just enrolled into Huyang Academy. Could it be that he was able to stand on even footing with all these very important people of Rain Country? I don't have the time, Ling Han said calmly. Pooh! Instantly, everyone once again choked, all wearing expressions of extreme disbelief. Wu Songlin's invitation to tea. Most likely not even the clan heads of the 8 great clans dared to say they didn't have the time, right? This brat was really too awesome, and he had even rejected the invitation so cleanly. Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tangyun, and the others all looked overjoyed. As their hearts beat wildly, they knew for sure that they had made the right gamble. But even they had never thought that Ling Han had just barely entered into the Huyang Academy yet, had already formed relations with the headmaster of the alchemy department, a black-grade high-level alchemist. Moreover, it seemed to be an extremely good relationship. If they discovered that even the other black-grade high-level alchemist of Rain Country, the pavilion master of Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, had to respectfully address Ling Han as Young Master Han, one wonders what kind of expression these people would have. Release me, damn you. You actually dared to step on me. I will definitely not spare you. Feng Luo was still wailing. His face was still stepped on firmly by Ling Han's foot, so he couldn't hear what the others were saying. However, even if he had heard, based on his knowledge, there was no way he would understand the significance of the name Wu Songlin. Everyone's attitude changed at the same moment. Ling Han was someone that even Wu Songlin wanted to invite to tea. Who would dare to oppose such a person? Feng Yin indeed had a very bright future ahead of him, but how could he compare with a black-grade high-level alchemist? Wei He Lu was even less of a consideration in their minds. The current him wasn't even Wu Songlin's personal disciple yet. Apologies for our prior offense. Please bear with us, younger brother disciple Ling. We would definitely visit you to make a formal apology on another day. When Hai Xing and his fellows said as they raised their clasped hands in Ling Han's direction in apology. In their hearts, they were already gritting their teeth with hatred towards Wei He Lu and Feng Luo. If it was not for the two of them, how could they have offended Ling Han? Ling Han only gave a casual wave of his hand. He had not taken these 3 young men seriously in the first place. When Hai Xing and his fellows were angered at first, but when they recalled that Ling Han was someone that Wu Songlin wanted to invite to tea, their anger instantly disappeared. If it was Wu Songlin who had treated them this way, would they dare to be angry? Of course not, and that's the end of it. On the other hand, Qi Yongyi and the others all looked extremely satisfied. You guys were so arrogant just now, and now you're cowering like dogs. They all crossed their arms in front of their chests and raised their heads high, looking very disdainful. When Hai Xing and his friends did not even dare to say anything. They hurriedly turned around and left, not even staying to participate in the auction. How would they still have the mood to? Rather, they were all thinking about how to gain Ling Han's forgiveness in the future. Wei He Li's expression changed multiple times, as if he were a chameleon. In the end, he clenched his teeth, walked towards to Ling Han, and said, Young Master Han, I was ignorant. I hope that you will generously forgive my misdemeanor this one time. Who are you? Ling Han asked serenely. Wei He Lu instantly felt like he wanted to bite someone, thinking, you didn't lose anything, and I was the one who received a slap from you. And now I'm actively apologizing, so why are you still unwilling to let the matter drop? Younger brother disciple, do you have some kind of misunderstanding with Ling Han? Li Xichan's expression immediately darkened as she watched this happen. She was very clear what kind of position Ling Han held in her master's heart. He was someone that her master would practically respect and revere as a grandmaster alchemist. And you idiot actually dare to come into conflict with Ling Han, that was really seeking your own demise. It's nothing much, really. Just that Brother Ling and young Master Luo seemed to have some kind of misunderstanding between them. I wanted to help them mediate a bit, but who would have thought that both of them were a bit too quick-tempered, which led to a bit of a misunderstanding, Wei He Lu said, playing down the matter. His cold eyes were fixed on Ling Han, but burning hatred for Ling Han had risen within his heart. However, he had regained his bearings from the earlier shock that he had experienced. Did not believe that Wu Songlin would invite Ling Han to tea. Who were you trying to fool? Who was Wu Songlin? And who was Ling Han? Even the two of them knowing each other was practically an impossibility. What more drinking tea together? It must be that Li Si-chan was the one who had been looking for Ling Han, but because she was afraid of letting others know about that, she had pushed all the blame to Wu Songlin. Why? Because who would dare to confirm this kind of matter with Wu Songlin? And that's the answer itself. He was indeed very respectful and reverent towards Li Si-chan, but because he felt as if he had now gotten hold of her weakness, he naturally felt very bold. Brother Wei, you've spoken too lightly, haven't you? Jin Wuji said with a cold laugh. Just now, you had wanted Ling Han to kneel down to lick Feng Luo's shoes. What? Li Si-chan's face instantly became as cold as ice, and when she looked at Wei He Lu, it was as if she was looking at a dead man. She would definitely have to report this matter to Wu Songlin, and based on Wu Songlin's respect towards Ling Han, it was a huge question whether Wei He Lu would even be allowed to remain at the alchemy department, what more to become Wu Songlin's personal disciple. Elder sister disciple Li, you mustn't just listen to their side of the story. Wei He Lu had already made up his mind to continue his lies, so naturally he would not be making any concessions. Ling Han, when are you going to raise your foot? Feng Luo shouted gloomily, both enraged and embarrassed. You guys are really having fun talking, but he was still lying on the ground, and there was still a foot stepping on his face. Ling Han gave a humph and added a bit of strength into his foot, causing Feng Luo to suddenly wail in pain. His face was already twisted to an extreme degree. He looked at the spectators and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I will not be killing him here." When everyone heard these words, they all felt a hair-raising chill. The implication in Ling Han's words was clear to them would still be killing Feng Luo one day. Chapter 101. Chapter 101. Second Star Grass. Hunyo's eyes were staring fixedly at Feng Luo. She had sensed a very strong hatred towards Ling Han from this human, causing her killing intent to rise. She kept staring at Feng Luo's neck, thinking of taking a bite out of that neck and dealing with that human once and for all. Ling Han reached out and carried Hunyo and said, "He's too dirty." Hunyo was obviously reluctant, shrinking in Ling Han's hold. A powerful killing intent was still brimming in her eyes. Pa! Ling Han gave a stomp of his foot, and a sudden, earth-shaking wail was heard from Feng Luo. His whole mouth was filled with blood. He opened his blood and spat out 10+ fragments of teeth. It looked like his entire mouth of teeth had been shattered with this powerful stomp of Ling Han. The agony caused Feng Luo to tear up and snivel. It was a pain that bore into his heart and went straight into his bones. But because Ling Han had finally raised his foot, he was able to painstakingly get to his feet. As his eyes swept over his surroundings, he felt that all the people here looked detestable to him. Indeed, they all watched as his whole mouthful of teeth had been shattered by a stomp of Ling Han's foot, and did not even help one bit. Damn them. They deserved to die. However, he was well aware that the current him did not have the ability to oppose the people here, so he could only hatefully cast his eyes over all the people here before abruptly turning around to leave. Naturally, the person he hated the most was Ling Han. He would definitely not let the matter end here. Wei He Lu was also unable to continue staying here, so he quickly followed in Feng Luo's footsteps and departed. Qi Yongyi and the others all frowned. Ling Han's actions equated creating a blood feud between himself and the Feng brothers. This was not something that could be easily resolved. But actually, the moment Ling Han had stepped on Feng Luo, this feud was already firmly established, and Ling Han was already firmly on the opposing side of the Feng brothers. As long as Ling Han continued to stay at the Imperial City, then no matter how overbearing Feng Yan was, he would still not dare to take action against Ling Han. Ling Han held no fear. In his last life, he had been a powerful warrior of heaven tier. Though now he needed to start again from the beginning, did he really need to feel dread towards two such minor characters? He would eventually kill the two of them. Haha, the auction is about to begin. Let's go in. Qi Yongyi said with a laugh. This time, thanks to Ling Han, they managed to suppress Wen Haixing and his companions, so he was extremely happy. Let's head in together, Li Si-chan suggested. En? He Jun Shun, Qi Yongyi, and the others all revealed expressions of disbelief. Was this really Li Xichan? The twin pearls of the imperial city, both stunning and devastatingly beautiful. That's how Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were known in the imperial city. Li Xichan was not like Lu Yutong. The latter had the image of an icy beauty, always maintaining a distance from those around her, that none may trespass. Li Xichan, on the other hand, was very gentle, but underneath her lay a core made of ice. Though she was polite and well-mannered to everyone, she similarly exuded an aura that discouraged others from getting closer. And now, she actually invited Ling Han to join her of her own volition. This was an inconceivable scene to Qi Yongyi and the others. They were all wondering if they had misheard her, or if their eyes had blurred and they had mistook someone else for Li Xichan. But He Junchen's expression immediately darkened. From the start, he had disliked Ling Han, and now, it seemed as if the girl that he admired had some kind of unknown relations with Ling Han, causing powerful jealousy to rise within his heart. All right, Ling Han agreed, without thinking too deeply about it. The entire group entered the Spiritual Treasures Pavilion. In this imperial city, Qi Yongye's reputation was obviously not as useful as Li Xichan's, for Li Xichan actually had a private room which she led the others to. The room could accommodate 10 people, so it was not too much of a tight fit for them. He Junchen started to ask about Ling Han's identity in a roundabout way. Which party did such an awesome person come from? But when he found out that Ling Han actually came from Gray Cloud Town, a town under the jurisdiction of Diyuan City, he was instantly stunned. How could that be? A major, important character like Wu Songlin actually wanted to invite Ling Han to tea? He could not understand it. He really could not understand it. Qi Yongyi and the others, on the other hand, had a slight idea what was going on. Because, back in Diyuan City, there were already 3 black-grade alchemists that gathered around Ling Han. Though Wu Songlin's status was far higher than Zhu He Xian and the rest, it was still easier for them to accept such an inconceivable matter. Meanwhile, Ling Han was indifferent about what the others were thinking. The only thing he was focused on doing now was to see what good things he would be able to see in this auction. After 10,000 years, it appeared as if a lot of pill formulae had been lost in the passage of time. For example, a treasure like the dark moon grass was actually reduced to being used to concoct the purple origin pill. Then, chances were that there would appear spiritual medicines that were extremely valuable, yet used very wastefully. Mere moments later, the auction began. Because the auction today was only the small-scale auction that would be held every month. While there were many participants, not many of them could actually pay large sums of money for the items on auction. As a result, the prices of the items on auction all fell into a reasonable range. Meanwhile, Ling Han was extremely astonished, because some of what he saw as extremely low-grade alchemical pills could actually be sold at exorbitant prices. These people were filthy rich, but very foolish. He was secretly pondering that it was perhaps time for him to concoct some alchemical pills. Though there were still monetary notes of about 100,000+ in his pockets, looking at the generous way the people here were throwing around their money recklessly, a mere 100,000+ silver coins really could not buy much. I don't know how many alchemists are present here today, but the upcoming merchandise is truly a valuable medicinal ingredient. The auctioneer performed with full effort on the stage. He gave a wave of his hand, and a beautiful female attendant walked onto the stage, carrying a tray. There were 3 herbs on the tray, and if one paid close attention, they were actually glittering like stars. Second star grass. Someone immediately called out. Second star grass is actually on auction. This is indeed a valuable treasure for alchemists, but for martial artists, this second star grass does not have much value. The auctioneer cleared his throat and said, "That's right. This is indeed the second star grass which can be used to concoct the refreshing pill. I believe that most would know of the usefulness of the refreshing pill. It can refresh an individual's state of mind. For a martial artist, this indeed does not have much value, but for an alchemist, its value is beyond measure. For a martial artist, when their spirit was exhausted, they would not be able to continue moving their origin power and cultivate. Thus, The value of the refreshing pill for a martial artist was only extending the time he could cultivate every day to be a little longer, but who would have so many refreshing pills to squander? Even if he had 10, that only meant that he'd be able to cultivate longer for 10 days. And what use was that? But it was a completely different matter for an alchemist. Controlling flames was something that exhausted one's mental energy to a great degree, but some alchemical pills needed a very, very long time to be concocted, and if the alchemist's mental energy ran out midway and he did not have enough spiritual energy left, then what was to be done? It was in such moments that the refreshing pill would come into play. It would replenish the spiritual and mental energy of the alchemist, and he'd be able to successfully concoct an alchemical pill that he had initially been unable to concoct. Thus, Li Si-chan's eyes immediately lit up. What alchemists dared to say that their spiritual energy was abundant enough to the point that they could concoct every single type of alchemical pill? Ling Han's eyes lit up as well. At the same time, he felt an irrepressible urge to swear. That was second star grass, and it could be used to concoct the second star pill. And what were the effects of the second star grass? To strengthen one's mental energy. One was used to replenish, and the other could be used to strengthen. How could they be the same? If it was merely replenishing, then it would work only one time. But if it was strengthening, then the effects were permanent. Moreover, even martial artists would scramble madly for the second star pill, and the value of the second star grass could not be compared to the value of the concocted second star pill. Ling Han was shaking his head mentally. The field of alchemy had degraded too much in this era. Previously, the dark moon grass was used to concoct the purple origin pill, and now, the second star grass was being wasted to concoct the refreshing pill. He said to Li Si-chan, "Girl, let me have this second star grass." Li Si-chan knew that Ling Han was also an alchemist, so it was not a strange thing that he would want the second star grass too, but she needed it as well. She could not help revealing a troubled expression. She could reject him, but this was a person even her master respected. But if she agreed, then wouldn't that mean that she would lose such a valuable medicinal ingredient? Seeing her expression, Ling Han leaned towards her and said in a low voice, "I can sell you a cultivation technique that will allow you to speed up the recovery of your mental energy." What? Li Si-chan forgot their surroundings as she suddenly yelled. Chapter 102. Chapter 102. Major Origin Spirit Replenishing Technique. It was common sense that aside from taking medicine, time was the only way to slowly recover one's spiritual energy. And now, Ling Han actually said that he wanted to sell her a cultivation technique that would boost the recovery of spiritual energy. How could she not lose her bearings from such an extreme shock? "Bastard! What did you do to Si-chan?" He Jun-shun immediately shouted, his whole face filled with thunderous rage. When he saw the expression of utter astonishment on Li Si-chan's face, he assumed that she had been taken advantage of by Ling Han. He had a crush on Li Si-chan, and when he had seen the previous intimate interactions between Ling Han and Li Si-chan, he was already extremely displeased. Now, he naturally could no longer restrain his resentment. "It's none of your business, just sit down somewhere," Ling Han said nonchalantly. "How dare you?" He Jun-shun had already been extremely irritated by Ling Han's presence, and now he stood up instantly in a rage, ready to make a move. "Elder brother disciple he, what are you doing?" Li Si-chan immediately stretched out an arm to block his advance, her beautiful face filled with displeasure. That was natural. If there really existed such a cultivation technique that could aid in the recovery of spiritual energy, then its value would be absolutely beyond measure, and would also be something that all the alchemists in this world would go crazy about. Are you actually defending him?" He Jun-shin's expression transformed drastically. He had already been suspicious of the ambiguous relationship between Ling Han and Li Si-chan in the first place. Now that Li Si-chan was actually protecting Ling Han, she caused his suspicions to deepen. "You were the unreasonable one in the first place," Li Si-chan said, displeased. "I am unreasonable?" He Jun-shin almost jumped up, thinking, "You adulterous couple are already flirting so openly in public, and actually dare to accuse me of being unreasonable. Idiot, shut up." When Ling Han saw that the bidding for the second star grass had already began, he quickly waved a hand at Li Si-chan and said, get me this second star grass, and that cultivation technique will belong to you. He only had over 100,000 silver coins, which was definitely not enough to buy these 3 stalks of second star grass. He naturally could only place his hopes on this rich woman, Li Si-chan. If this wasn't the case, he wouldn't consider selling off that spiritual energy replenishing cultivation technique even if it was only a low-grade spiritual support technique. At least in the vicinity of Rain Country, it was still a priceless treasure. Li Si-chan's attention was immediately turned back to him, and she asked, "You wouldn't be lying to me, right? What do you think?" Ling Han countered. Li Si-chan pondered that while this guy was actually younger than herself, his ability had already been recognized and acknowledged by 2 black-grade high-level alchemists at the same time, so it wasn't likely he would be making baseless boasts. After all, the acknowledgement of these 2 alchemists was definitely worth more than a few dozen hundred thousands of silver coins. She nodded and immediately began bidding. As an alchemist, even if she was only in yellow-grade mid-level now, the wealth she possessed was still very shocking. She easily raised her bid to the exorbitant price of over 1,000,000 silver coins, and it still seemed as if it was something very easy for her. Ling Han nodded internally. Looks like this girl's rate of success when concocting pills was not low, and that was why she had been able to accumulate such wealth. An alchemist being in a higher grade did not mean that he would definitely be able to earn money, or earn big money, because this was affected by their success rate. For example, let's say that the medicinal ingredients cost 1,000,000 silver coins, and theoretically, 30 alchemical pills could be concocted from this amount of ingredients. The total worth of these 30 pills would be 9,000,000 coins, so with a 100% successful concoction rate, an alchemist would be able to earn 8,000,000 coins, and that was a profit of 8 times his costs. But if the alchemist's success rate was only 10%, then the 3 alchemical pills that were concocted would be sold for only 900,000 silver coins. Not only would the alchemist not profit, he would have lost 100,000 coins. The higher the grade of the alchemical pill, the lower the rate of successful concoction. So don't think that alchemy was a profession that earned big money. Whether or not it would be profitable would still depend on the alchemist. The amount of money earned would differ with different alchemists. For example, the 3-fire guide that Ling Han had invented in his last life was able to greatly increase the rate of success and brought a revolution to the field of alchemy. It also earned Ling Han the revered name of Alchemy Emperor. While Li Si-chan was only a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist, if her rate of success was extremely high, she too would be able to earn a lot of money. Of course, the higher the grade of alchemical pill, the more money could be earned with a high success rate. For example, when Ling Han in his last life had concocted some earth-grade alchemical pills, then no matter how much money you offered, you still would not be able to buy any. You had to trade either natural treasures, high-grade cultivation techniques, or martial techniques in exchange for a few earth-grade alchemical pills. While he was in his pensive thought, Li Si-chan had already successfully obtained the 3 stalks of second star grass, paying the high price of 1,200,000 silver coins. After all, there weren't many alchemists here, and even if there were, they were obviously not as wealthy as Li Si-chan. Ling Han smiled widely. If it had been his last life, it would not be possible to purchase such a priceless item with worthless crap like gold and silver coins. Spending a mere 1,000,000+ silver coins, he managed to get it. This was an extremely great profit. Very quickly, the staff of Spiritual Treasures Pavilion had delivered the 3 stalks of second star grass over to them. "When you give me that cultivation technique, I'll give you the second star grass," Li Si-chan said. The corners of Ling Han's lips twitched, and he said, "Do you think I would renege on a promise to a little girl like you? Don't act so old and mature. You're 1 year younger than me," Li Si-chan pointed out. She was actually really scared that Ling Han would act shamelessly and take advantage of his younger age to trick her out of her money. After all, this was the money that she had earned through her own hard effort. "Fine then, let's return to the academy immediately." Ling Han could barely wait to concoct the second star pill. The sooner he took the pill, the sooner his spiritual energy would be increased, and he would be able to cultivate for a slightly longer period of time every day. Accumulating this extra bit of time over a long period of time would eventually lead to a very significant increase of his cultivation. "All right, Li Si-chan nodded. She wanted to get her hands on a cultivation technique like this as soon as possible, too. Ling Han carried Hun Yo, and the group of three departed. Qi Yong-yi and the others snickered in unison, revealing knowing expressions. Only He Jun-chen's expression darkened like water. He had already developed a powerful killing intent for Ling Han. After all, Li Si-chan was not only one of the twin stunning pearls of the imperial city, she herself was a very impressive alchemist, possessing a future with unlimited possibilities. If he was able to marry such a woman, then whether it was for himself or for the clan behind him, this would be a colossal gain. This was his woman, and he would mercilessly kill all who threatened his position as her man. Ling Han and Li Si-chan soon returned to the academy. When they arrived at the place Ling Han was staying at, he told Hun Yo to play by herself while he began to impart a spiritual energy replenishing cultivation technique to Li Si-chan. The name of this technique was Major Origin Spirit Replenishing Technique. This was not Ling Han's own invention. Instead, it was an extremely common spiritual support technique in the field of alchemy from his last life. It was very effective for the recovery of spiritual energy for any alchemist below Gushing Spring tier, but after the alchemist has passed into Gushing Spring tier, its effects would begin to decrease. Thus, Ling Han did not have much misgivings or reluctance, and directly taught it to Li Si-chan. Otherwise, the latter would have to perform 3 kowtows and 9 bows, completing the formalities of becoming his disciple, before he would be willing to teach her the real art of alchemy. But for Li Si-chan, this cultivation technique was indescribably valuable and priceless. Her whole body was shivering, because she was really too overwhelmed with excitement. Can I teach this Major Origin Spirit Replenishing Technique to my master? She asked very nervously. All right, then I'll sell it for a rough 10 million. Ling Han nodded without hesitation. When you sold it to me, the price was only 1,200,000. Though Li Si-chan knew that Wu Songlin could easily afford this sum of money, but as his disciple, she would naturally want to defend her master's interests. That's because you're a beauty, so I gave you a friendly price. Your master. Sigh, not pleasing to the eye at all, so of course I'd be selling it to him at the original price. Ling Han laughed. Li Si-chan rolled her eyes at him, but because Ling Han was complimenting her beauty in a roundabout way, she was still very happy. Chapter 103. Chapter 103, Sword Heart. Li Si-chan very happily departed, and Ling Han lay on his bed for some rest. It wasn't that he did not want to immediately begin concocting the second star pill, just that he had never imagined that he would actually manage to obtain such a valuable spiritual medicine on his very first day in the Imperial City. How could he have the other supplementary ingredients on hand? As a result, the only option for him now was to wait until the next day to go to the Heavens Medicine Pavilion to buy the complete set of ingredients necessary before he could go on to the next step. Conveniently, he still had to fix up his own courtyard slightly. After all, he would have to stay here for at least a few years, so it was necessary to set up some restrictions in the surrounding area. This would be one of the hidden cards up his sleeve. Meanwhile, Hun Yo had lain down beside his legs like a giant cat, and very quickly, the sound of her breathing lengthened and became quieter. But if there was any little bit of disturbance, she would immediately be alerted to wakefulness, bare her sharp teeth, and growl. Ling Han believed that with Lu Yutong's influence in the academy, she would be able to find him very soon. Thus, Ling Han needed not think about anything else, and went to sleep very peacefully. The night passed in silence, and early the next morning, after Ling Han had prepared breakfast and filled the stomachs of both himself and Hun Yo, he headed to officially greet his teacher. This was the basic respect that a student should have towards his teacher. He pushed the door open and entered to see that Imo Gao was practicing his sword techniques. However, it was very odd. His right hand held a sword while his left hand was firmly held in a gesture. There wasn't any sort of movement from him at all. Was he practicing his sword techniques, or practicing some kind of chi supporting technique? Hun Yo meanwhile revealed a very defensive expression. Her hands were firmly pressed upon the ground, her whole body slightly raised, her small mouth was open, and there was a ferocious light flickering in her eyes. She was ready to make a move at any moment. Ling Han was surprised. The little girl would only show such behavior when she sensed a threat, but the problem was this movement of Imo Gao very threatening? Wait. Ling Han's eyes gradually widened. His divine sense seemed to have detected something inconceivable, and that was the aura exuded from Imo Gao was extremely mysterious. It had a slightly familiar feeling to it, yet he couldn't really grasp what it was exactly. Sword, that's right. It had something to do with his sword. You're here, Imo Gao said, then accompany me in my sword practice. What sword technique is this? Ling Han asked. It's not any sword technique, but a sword of invincibility, Imo Gao declared incredibly. Meanwhile, Ling Han's heart skipped a beat. He had sensed a very mysterious feeling from the aura that Imo Gao had been giving out just now, and now getting the somewhat even more mysterious way the latter was speaking in, Ling Han felt as if he had grasped something, though it still wasn't too clear. Does a sword of invincibility exist in this world? He asked. A sword in the hands of an invincible swordsman would be a sword of invincibility. Imo Gao said, I am the sword itself. The heart of the sword is brightly lit, able to pierce through every attack and shatter every attack. Hong, Ling Han felt as if his whole mind had trembled, giving rise to a towering tsunami wave. Sword heart. No wonder he had felt a feeling of mystery, yet this profound feeling was so familiar to him. So Imo Gao was actually cultivating sword heart. He was not the slightest bit suspicious of Imo Gao putting on airs, because the overall level of martial arts in Rain Country was really too low. Simply being able to form sword chi, you'd be named as a ruler. There was no one who had managed to form sword ray at all, so how could sword heart be possible? The heart is the sword that is brightly lit. That was the highest level of comprehension of sword arts. With sword heart, all the attacks of this world would be easily understood and broken down. One only needs to wave his sword once, and all attacks would naturally be broken apart. Who would ever have thought that a swordsman at the mere level of the 9th layer of element gathering tier would be able to somewhat touch the level of sword heart? No wonder that Imo Gao, an obvious genius in his youth otherwise, he wouldn't have managed to enroll into Huyang Academy in the first place had all of a sudden gone mad. In truth, he hadn't gone mad at all. It was just that he had already began to cultivate sword heart at that time. However, it was immeasurably difficult to grasp sword heart. As a result, his cultivation had stagnated for these 10+ years, because he had concentrated all his efforts on comprehending sword heart. A somber respect came to life in Ling Han. This was sword heart. Even in his last life, there were not many elite swordsmen that had managed to successfully form it. But as long as one succeeded in forming sword heart, not only would he be invincible among all those in the same cultivation level, he'd also be able to disregard the colossal gulf of differing cultivation levels to kill a powerful enemy at a higher tier. It was incomparably feared. He clasped his hands together and said, "Please share your wisdom, teacher." Imo Gao was a bit surprised. Aside from himself, everyone else in the academy thought that he was off his rocker. Even he himself, in these 10+ years, would occasionally doubt if he had made a wrong turn in life, and whether he really would be able to create a sword of invincibility. And this young man, without any bit of hesitation, was actually willing to join him in sword practice. What deep trust this unfamiliar young man had towards him. When he thought this, Imo Gao actually felt a little touched. He, a solo swordsman with the sword as his only companion, completely isolated himself from everyone else. In the blink of an eye, 10+ years had already passed. He had spent it on sword practice, and even more sword practice. And now, a young man actually held such admiration and trust for him, causing him to suddenly become excited. This was a good student. He definitely had to teach this student well. Imo Gao was thinking thus in his heart, and began to talk non-stop. The art of the sword is like a person of noble character, magnanimous and devoid of even a single bit of vile character. This was the understanding that he had come to through these 10+ years of extreme focus and hard practice. He didn't even care if Ling Han could understand or not, and simply recited all of whatever he knew and had grasped. Yet Ling Han was becoming more and more astonished. Although his cultivation level had dropped, his comprehension was still the one of that powerful warrior of heaven tier that he had been. So naturally, he could understand all of what Imo Gao was saying. And it was exactly because he could understand everything that he was astonished beyond measure. Imo Gao's understanding of the sword had already completely surpassed his cultivation level. Even if he had yet to reach the level of the heart of the sword is brightly lit, he was just a mere step away from grasping sword heart. In a place with such a low overall level of martial arts, and with himself who was at the mere level of 9th layer of element gathering tier, his fingers actually managed to touch the door that led to sword heart. How could Ling Han not be astonished? When Imo Gao was finished speaking, Ling Han simply stood there without moving at all, silently digesting all that he had heard. For any swordsman, this lecture was invaluable. This was not a sword technique, nor was it a martial arts technique at the high level of heaven or earth grade. It was only a lecture of an individual's understanding of the art of the sword. Yet it was an explanation that was very close to the core of the art, directly touching the base. Of course, even if a swordsman had managed to form sword heart, the level every individual swordsman could grasp would differ, because sword heart was based on the individual swordsman's understanding of the art of the sword. But listening to such a lecture was too great a help for Ling Han, who had, at the moment, only formed 5 flashes of sword chi. It was as if there was a path of gold laid out in front of him, guiding his advance forwards. Hunyo instantly looked bored. Her hands held onto her ears, and she appeared very sleepy. "Hey!" Ling Han suddenly leaped up, the sword hanging at his waist, leaving its sheath. He quickly turned around on the spot and brandished his sword in a wave. 5 flashes of sword chi danced unhindered. Shwa, 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 cold light flashed and flickered. But moments later, another needle-sharp flash of sword chi was actually formed and joined the previous 5 flashes of sword chi. The 6th flash of sword chi. This flash of sword chi quickly grew, becoming longer and wider, and finally looked no different from the other 5 flashes of sword chi. "Many thanks, teacher." Ling Han raised his clasped hands towards Imo Gao and offered his thanks. This was not as simple as only having formed a flash of sword chi. He would be able to benefit from Imo Gao's lecture throughout his whole life. If he managed to grasp sword heart in this lifetime, Imo Gao's lecture would at least have helped him save half the time he needed to be able to reach that step. He had never thought this would happen. The only reason why he had come to Huyang Academy was to make Ling Dongxing happy, yet he would actually have such an unexpected gain. He's earned big. Chapter 104. Chapter 104. Embarrassingly short of money. Imo Gao was also astonished. In his opinion, any student that would have been shoved to him must have come into the academy through a back door. There was not much future in developing such a student, and that was why he would be wasting his time with Imo Gao. Just now, he had spoken for so long and so much. Rather than saying that he was teaching Ling Han, it was more appropriate to say that he had all of these words stuffed inside him for too long, so he desperately wanted to share them with someone else. He did not consider at all whether Ling Han could understand what he was saying or not. He had never thought that Ling Han would really have understood his lecture. Moreover, after digesting the information he had blurted out, Ling Han very quickly managed to form a new flash of sword chi. If it was only a single flash of sword chi, he could still accept it. The problem was that Ling Han had already possessed 5 flashes of sword chi in the first place. 5 flashes of sword chi, what kind of concept was that? 3 flashes of sword chi, and you would be able to claim the name of ruler. 5 flashes, and that was a minor achievement. This was definitely a genius, and it was very likely that he had surpassed all those of the same age in Rain Country. But how could such a genius be shoved onto him to be taught? Imo Gao really couldn't understand. However, when his thoughts took a different turn, he became extremely delighted. Because Ling Han was now his student, and the higher the achievements his student managed to attain in the future, the prouder he would become. "Teacher, there are some parts one didn't really understand," Ling Han questioned Imo Gao after he had withdrawn his sword. With regards to the level of understanding of martial arts, he was more than qualified to be the Grandmaster of the Grandmaster of Imo Gao. But if it was only looking at the comprehension of the art of the sword, Mo Gao was above him. The reasons were simple. Firstly, Mo Gao had immersed himself in the art of the sword for 10+ years, and secondly, he was indeed a genius swordsman. Whatever you don't understand, just say it, Mo Gao immediately said. It had been more than 10 years. When had he ever been asked questions by a student? Ling Han raised some of his doubts, and Mo Gao immediately gave him a lecture based on his own understanding. Through this process, he also obtained a great enlightenment for himself. One has to know that though Ling Han himself had not spent much time on the art of the sword, his knowledge as a former warrior of heaven tier was still there, so the questions he asked were all core questions. Mo Gao continuously made sounds like "e", "ya", and "oh", his eyes becoming brighter and brighter. His expression was one of both delight and frustration, seemingly unable to contain his present joy. Unknowingly, the time had arrived at noontime. Mo Gao gave a long sigh and said, "Your talent in the art of the sword is higher than mine. I do not have the face to become your teacher. Let's just do it this way. The both of us will treat each other as friends of the same generation and have frequent discussions with each other." Ling Han shook his head and said, "In the art of the sword, Teacher Mo indeed has the qualifications to become my teacher. Even if I surpass Teacher Mo in the art of the sword someday, I will never forget the favor Teacher Mo has done by teaching me today." Mo Gao was deeply moved. He would actually encounter such an exceptionally talented student. It was a pity that he was not qualified enough to take Ling Han as disciple. Their teacher-student relationship, too, was only formed because of the academy. "Oh," Hunyo said pitifully, tugging on Ling Han's sleeve. All right, let's go eat." Ling Han bade Mo Gao goodbye and left the academy. He then found a random restaurant, ordered some main dishes of meat and fish, and began feasting together with Hunyo. If you wanted to eat with this little girl, you really needed to be quick enough. Otherwise, whenever a dish was served, it would definitely be gone within mere moments. One meal actually cost over 1,000 silver coins, causing Ling Han to cry out that he really did not have enough money to spend. This was because the prices in the imperial city were very high, and this little girl really had too big an appetite. He really needed to concoct some alchemical pills to earn money. Otherwise, it'd be a problem just feeding Hunyo. What more to buy resources for his own cultivation? There was nothing to be done about it. He had just arrived at the imperial city yesterday, so there was 1,000 things for him to do. He would have to start everything all over again. Ling Han held on to Hunyo's tiny hand and asked around the people on the streets. This way, he soon found Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. It really did deserve the name of the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion of the imperial city. Merely the flight of 1,000 steps leading to the entrance was impressive enough to provoke gasps of amazement. The steps were as wide as 100 meters, slanting all the way upwards. There was an extremely glamorous, luxurious giant hall to be seen at the high level of 300 meters upwards. Ling Han and Hunyo climbed the stairs and entered the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Once they entered, they saw a sweet-looking female attendant responsible for sales walking forward to greet them, saying, "Honorable customer, how do you do? I am Xiaoying. May I know what kind of alchemical pills you require?" "I don't need any alchemical pills. I only need some ingredients," Ling Han said with a smile. "May I know what ingredients you require?" Xiaoying asked again. Ling Han recited the list of ingredients he required. Xiaoying had obviously been trained for a very long time. While she memorized the names and amounts of the ingredients, she even informed him of the prices of the individual ingredients. "Honored customer, your bill comes to a total of 320,000 silver coins," Xiaoying said with a slight smile. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion needed to depend on the sale of completed pills to earn money. In case of ingredients, unless they were especially valuable, for example, like the second-star grass, their price would only be a bit higher than their cost. Thus, even if this was a huge purchase, the profit made by the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion was really not much. As a result, the amount of commission she could earn would naturally not be much either. 320,000. Ling Han sighed. He only had about 100,000+ on hand. This was far from the amount that was necessary, but he wanted to concoct the second-star pill as soon as possible. So he said, please inform Fu Yuansheng for me. Just tell him that Ling Han is looking for him. Fu Yuansheng? The, the, the pavilion master. Xiao Ying was stunned for a moment, before suddenly realizing. Immediately, she was so shocked that she had even begun to stutter. What kind of remote existence was the pavilion master? Aside from the Rain Emperor, there was no one who possessed a higher status than their pavilion master. Even the clan heads of the 8 great clans were only able to stand on equal footing with the pavilion master. And now, a young man actually said he wanted to see the pavilion master. This was naturally troubling to her. There was no reason for her to inform the pavilion master of this at all. It's all right. You only need to tell him that I am Ling Han, and I believe Fu Yuansheng should even reward you, Ling Han said with a smile. That was natural. He, the Alchemy Emperor, was here personally. Fu Yuansheng would definitely be overjoyed. How would Xiao Ying dare to believe that? No matter how she looked, Ling Han looked to be only a young man of about 17 or 18 years old. So how could he possibly know the pavilion master? Even if the clan heads of the 8 great clans were here, whether or not the pavilion master would agree to meet with them depended on his mood. But in the training that she had received, the most important thing was not to offend any customers. Thus, she apologized and said, "At my rank, I am unable to personally see the pavilion master, so please wait for a moment while I report this to the branch manager." Ling Han would naturally not cause her unnecessary trouble, so he simply nodded and sat down somewhere. Hunyo saw him sit down and imitated him. She climbed up to Ling Han's lap and similarly sat very earnestly. After a while, they saw Xiao Ying walk behind a man who appeared to be in his 40s, and the pair was heading towards them. She looked to be in a bit of a panic. "Brat, so you're the one who wants to see our pavilion master?" This middle-aged man looked at Ling Han disdainfully. He had heard what Xiao Ying had to say. In his opinion, Ling Han must have been embarrassingly short of money, which was why he had deliberately said he knew the pavilion master, thinking of using this way to bargain for a cheaper price. He was really too naive. Ling Han's brow frowned, and he said, "You should speak more politely. If you have no money, then don't pretend to be so capable." The middle-aged man humphed, laughed loudly, and said, "If you really do know the pavilion master, then I will eat this whole table." He pointed at a long table at one side. Ling Han put on a smile and said, "I did not think you would have this kind of hobby. If I don't satisfy you, then wouldn't that be too unreasonable of me?" "You're spouting nonsense," the middle-aged man said coldly. Chapter 105. Chapter 105. Conceding defeat. "Manager Yuan," Xiao Ying called out to the middle-aged man in a low voice. Heaven's Medicine Pavilion had its rules. The first rule was, never, ever be impolite to any potential customer. The middle-aged man cast a displeased glance at Xiao Ying, waved his hand and said, "Somebody, chase this poor brat out of here." Xiao Ying did not dare to say anything further. She simply looked sympathetically at Ling Han and Hunyo. This middle-aged man's name was Yuan Gang. He had previously only been an odd jobs worker here, but unexpectedly, a few months ago, his younger brother advanced to become a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist, causing Yuan Gang's own position to rise, allowing him to obtain the position of a minor manager. Because he had struggled at the lowest level for a long time, now that he was in a high position, Yuan Gang had become extremely arrogant, always thinking of new ways to show off his present superiority. Ling Han was extremely unfortunate he just so happened to be this guy's target. Two sturdy, well-built men walked over and stood behind Ling Han. One of the pair spoke, "Honored customer, please come with us." Ling Han have a sigh. Did he really have to use force? Ling Han. Ling Han. It was at this very moment that a sweet voice was heard from behind him. Ling Han turned around to see that the speaker was actually Qi Zhantai. Why was the 7th princess of the royal house of the Deyuan king here? When he took a closer look, it seemed that both Xu Hexian and Zhang Wei Shan were here too. In that case, it was only natural that the girl was here too. "Yo, never thought that a poor brat like you would have such a pretty wife." Yuan Gang gave an envious look, then said to Ling Han, "Poor brat, lend me your wife for me to play with for a single night, and I could give you a 20% discount?" "Haha." Pa! His face suddenly suffered a slap. His feet stumbled and he directly fell onto the floor. The one who had slapped him was, of course, Ling Han. Bastard! You actually dared to hit me. Yuan Gang got up to his feet in a single movement, his face filled with thunderous rage. So what? Can't you be hit? Zhang Wei Shan walked over with a cold smile. And who are you? Yuan Gang did not even think, and immediately raised his finger to point directly at Zhang Wei Shan's face. Wow, what? He gasped in shock. There was astonishingly a silver badge hanging on this newcomer's breast. Perhaps there would still be some people who may not recognize this, but definitely not him. Experienced senior, who had been working at this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion doing odd jobs for over 10+ years. A black-grade low-level alchemist. Yes, sir. He hurriedly bent his knees in a bow, an obeisant expression on his face. The only reason he was in the position of minor manager was because of his younger brother, yet his younger brother was only a yellow-grade mid-level alchemist. Compared with this esteemed black-grade low-level alchemist in front of him, the latter was on a complete different level. Master, this guy was very bad, Qi Zhantai said immediately. Pooh! Yuan Gang instantly choked. This beauty was actually the disciple of a black-grade alchemist, and he had actually dared to flirt with her. Wasn't that practically seeking his own demise? He scowled miserably and said, "This young miss, apologies for my smelly mouth, only knowing how to speak nonsense, deserves to be hit, deserves to be hit." He began to slap himself repeatedly with a pa, pa, pa sound. Young Friendling, young Friendling. Zhu He Xian had also walked over, and together with Zhang Wei Shan, they raised their clasped hands in Ling Han's direction in greeting. Grandmaster Zhu. Yuan Gang had only at this moment spotted Zhu He Xian, and was so scared at this point that his whole face had turned pale. Unlike Zhang Wei Shan, who stayed long-term in Yuan City to oversee the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion branch there, Zhu He Xian had previously always been in the Imperial City. How could Yuan Gang not recognize him? Yet these two black-grade alchemists actually performed such a respectful greeting to Ling Han. How could this not scare him witless? The two of you are here just in time. Help me call over Fu Yuan Sheng. Ling Han said with a smile. Zhu He Xian took one look at Yuan Gang, then said, Young Friendling, we don't have to trouble the pavilion master just to deal with a nasty character like this, right? He was a black-grade low-level alchemist. He only needed to say the word, and this mere minor manager would be dealt with, no questions asked. Grandmaster Zhu, please forgive my blindness. Yuan Gang hurriedly began to beg for mercy. But after speaking these words, he realized that the deciding factor in this matter should be Ling Han. So he quickly turned back around and said, Young Master Ling, please be generous and have mercy on me just this once. You've forgotten. We have a bet going on between us. Ling Han laughed. Grandmaster Zhu, please help me go and inform Fu Yuan Sheng and ask him to come over. Young Master Ling? Zhu He Xian stepped forwards and said in a low voice, You know Grandmaster Fu? Yes, I do. Help me call him over. I have something to discuss with him, Ling Han nodded. Then I shall immediately go call him for you, Zhu He Xian said quickly, turned around and left to do what he said. Within moments, Zhu He Xian and Fu Yuan Sheng were walking quickly over towards them. Naturally, Fu Yuan Sheng was walking in front, while Zhu He Xian followed behind. Haha, young Master Ling has arrived. Yet I did not come out to receive you personally. Please forgive my slight. Fu Yuan Sheng said hurriedly. Yuan Gang's face had paled to a whole new level. So it was not just Zhu He Xian that revered Ling Han so much, even Fu Yuan Sheng treated him with such respect. Who was this brat? He was a little too awesome, wasn't he? Ling Han smiled at Fu Yuan Sheng, then looked over at Yuan Gang and said, This bet should be counted as my win, right? Of course, it's your win, young Master Ling. Yuan Gang took advantage of the change of topic and immediately said in a flattering tone. Ling Han nodded and said, All right, then you can start eating. Ah. Yuan Gang found himself suddenly tongue-tied. What is it? Do you need me to add some seasonings and cook it for you? All right, So do you want it braised or steamed? Ling Han said with a smile. Young Master Ling is really such a joker, Yuan Gang laughed awkwardly. I may joke around with my friends, but you are not my friend, Ling Han said calmly. What is going on? Fu Yuanshang interrupted, his tone already filled with strong displeasure. He and Wu Songlin had just benefited from Ling Han's teachings the day before, which allowed the two of them to see a flicker of hope to break through to become Earth-grade alchemists. For the two of them, Ling Han could even be considered as half their master. And now Ling Han was obviously expressing his dissatisfaction, so he naturally was also extremely unhappy. It was not very appropriate for him to ask Ling Han, and he would not be asking Yuan Gang either, so he directed his gaze at Xiaoying. Yuan Gang instantly began to signal repeatedly at Xiaoying with his eyes, hoping that she would be merciful with her words and speak a few good words on his behalf. However, Xiaoying pretended she had not seen his desperate look and recounted all that had happened earlier from start to finish. Fu Yuanshang was instantly enraged, and pointing at Yuan Gang's nose, he said, How dare you? So you are already in the position that you can speak for me? Since it was your own words, then go ahead and eat. Yuan Gang's face twitched uncontrollably. This time, it was the command of the pavilion master of Rain Country's Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. Even the Rain Emperor himself would have to give him some face. Looks like there was nothing to be done. Whether he liked it or not, he was going to have to eat. But still, how was he supposed to force himself to eat a table? He found his resolve, and with a pie ripped off a table leg, put it in his mouth and began to chew. Kacha, kacha. He was in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so his teeth and strength were not too weak. It was easy for him to chew the table leg to bits. When the other staff members saw this, they all hid a smile. Yuan Gang was a nasty character that had been acting high and mighty after getting this position. There were quite a few people in Heaven's Medicine Pavilion who did not like the way he did things, but they did not dare oppose him publicly. They were naturally happy to watch the show of him struggling to stuff the table leg down his throat. Ling Han, on the other hand, was not interested in watching the magnificent feat of Yuan Gang eating the whole table. He said to Fu Yuanshang, You should just fire this kind of person. This young girl is quite able, so just let her take over the vacant position. I shall listen to young Master Ling's arrangements, Fu Yuanshang said very humbly. Xiaoying instantly looked overjoyed, and when she looked at Ling Han, her eyes were filled with gratitude. Chapter 106. Chapter 106, Doubt. Yuan Gang repeatedly begged for mercy, yet who would really take to heart such a minor character? In the end, he could only leave in defeat. The other members of the staff all wanted to break into applause out of happiness. This Yuan Gang was a vile character who had just gotten a bit of success recently, yet was arrogant without limits. They all felt that he deserved this kind of ending. When Xiaoying saw Ling Han, Fu Yuanshang, and the others disappear around the corner, she could not help revealing an infatuated expression. A young girl like her naturally did not lack a romantic imagination. However, she knew that there was too big a gulf between Ling Han and herself in terms of status, so she was just fantasizing a bit. Her heart was filled with gratitude, because she had received a personal acknowledgement from Fu Yuanshang. Her position in this Heaven's Medicine Pavilion would be unshakable. For Ling Han, this was only a very small matter, and when he arrived at Fu Yuanshang's study, he had completely put the earlier incident out of his mind. He did not want to waste any time, and so voiced out his intention to borrow some ingredients from Fu Yuanshang. Fu Yuanshang nodded and waved his hand. Of course, him waving his hand did not mean that he was refusing Ling Han's request, but that the medicinal ingredients would be a gift to Ling Han instead of a loan. What a joke! This was a Grandmaster alchemist. To be able to supply alchemical ingredients for Ling Han was his honor. What need was there for Ling Han to pay them back? Ling Han did not act modest and said, How about this? I will concoct an alchemical pill here, and you all can observe the way I do it. He had decided to enact a specific alchemist skill. This was far from the level of the 3 Fire Guide, but would be indescribably valuable to Fu Yuanshang and the others. Good, but I would have to ask you to wait for a moment, to allow me to call some other people here to observe, if that's all right? Fu Yuansheng asked cautiously. It would be best if there were more alchemists here to observe and benefit from such a great opportunity. They would be able to improve together. Moreover, the more people there were, then the more possible it would be for them to observe clearly that alchemist skill of Ling Han. Afterwards, they'd be able to confirm and double-check with one another, so they would not easily forget any details. Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan immediately looked a little guilty. The gazes they directed at Fu Yuansheng were filled with respect, because they had only thought of themselves just now and had not even taken others into consideration. He truly deserved the name of Grandmaster. He was indeed a person who thought of the bigger picture. Ling Han smiled and said, "You can, but it would not be appropriate for there to be more than 10 people." "I understand." Fu Yuansheng hurriedly excused himself and left. Meanwhile, Ling Han began to converse with Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan. Qi Zhantai stood at one side, unable to join in the conversation, obviously looking extremely bored. She was currently engaged in a staring contest with Hun Yo. She saw how Hun Yo was so cute, and so reached forward to pick her up. Yet, because Hun Yo disliked strangers getting too close to her, she immediately bared her small white teeth, revealing a very defensive expression. "If you don't want to be bitten, I'd advise you to move your hand away," Ling Han said to Qi Zhantai when he saw this happen out of the corner of his eyes. "I am in the second layer of element gathering tier. How could she manage to bite me?" Qi Zhantai did not believe his advice and instead extended her hand to reach out for Hun Yo at a faster pace. Hun Yo was enraged. Suddenly, she gave a strike of her fingernails and a bite, her movements exceptionally quick. "Ah!" Qi Zhantai hurriedly withdrew her hand, yet there had already appeared a bite mark on her fair, delicate hand. The pain almost caused her to tear up. Ling Han picked Hun Yo up to prevent her from taking advantage and pushing on with her attack. He laughed and said, "Even I have been bitten before. You, at the level of the second layer of element gathering tier, are really not that much." He turned back round and said to Hun Yo, "This is a friend. Don't bite her again." Hun Yo held onto Ling Han's neck, tilted her head, and continued to stare at Qi Zhantai, her stare still ferocious. Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan could not help but ask about Hun Yo's origins. When they found out the whole story, they were truly amazed, and felt that this little girl was indeed extremely fortunate. Even after dropping into a tiger's lair, she had still managed to survive to such an age. While they were talking, Fu Yuansheng had led 7 people in, all of different ages. The oldest of them looked to be in his 70s, and the youngest was at least in his 40s. All of them had at least one silver badge hanging on their chests, and some even had 2. This meant they were all either black-grade low-level or black-grade mid-level alchemists. "This is young Master Han, and we shall observe young Master Han concoct an alchemical pill later," Fu Yuansheng said. Hearing him say this, all 7 of the newcomers looked extremely surprised. Who were they? They were all black-grade alchemists, and in Rain Country, they could be considered very important people, with extremely high social status. If you were talking about concocting alchemical pills, they were naturally the ones who would be doing the teaching. What need was there for them to observe another person concocting pills? If the person they would be observing was either Fu Yuansheng or Wu Songling, that would be fine. As the only 2 black-grade high-level alchemists in Rain Country, these 2 men have naturally won the reverence and respect of all alchemists. But now, Fu Yuansheng actually wanted them to observe a young man concoct an alchemical pill. How could they accept that? Alchemists, belonging to an extremely rare and extremely important profession, caused everyone in this field to be extremely proud, and the higher their grade, the prouder they were. Immediately, there were a few of the alchemists who looked insulted and angered, but because of Fu Yuansheng's status, they did not lose their temper. Among them, one of the alchemists in his 40s could not hold himself back and said, "Pavilion Master, you're joking with us, right? You actually want us to observe a little guy concocting an alchemical pill?" He had something else that he had held himself back from saying. "This brat couldn't be your illegitimate son, right? To command so many of us to come here to instruct him?" Fu Yuansheng looked furious. In his opinion, being able to observe Ling Han in the process of concocting an alchemical pill was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Under normal circumstances, what alchemist would easily allow others to watch him concoct pills? Moreover, Ling Han had even said that he would be enacting an alchemist skill for their observation. If it was not for his determination and desperate desire to develop and advance the field of alchemy in Rain Country, then why else would he have called others here to observe? He Lin apologized to young Master Han. He said immediately in a deep voice. What? That alchemist by the name of He Lin raised a brow, looking extremely disbelieving. I'm a black-grade low-level alchemist. My status is so high and revered, yet you actually want me to apologize to a young boy like this? Pavilion Master, are you intending to use your public office to avenge private wrongs? How dare you? Zhu He Xian shouted instantly. His eyes were wide with rage, and he looked extremely furious. Both Ling Han and Fu Yuansheng were people he respected very much. Ha 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 ha. He Lin laughed loudly, with no hint of respect in his expression. He only gave a cold humph and said, some things are better left unsaid. He was indeed not afraid of Fu Yuansheng, because his father, He Luo Yun, was also a black-grade high-level alchemist. Years ago, He Luo Yun and Fu Yuansheng were already rivals. They would be competing over everything alchemy, martial arts. The two of them even fell in love with the same woman. In the end, He Luo Yun won the maiden's heart. And now, He Luo Yun already had one foot in the ranks of Earth-grade alchemists, and very soon, would be able to dominate fully over Fu Yuansheng. As a result, he naturally thought that Fu Yuansheng was deliberately beating down on him, unable to win over his old man. He was actually seeking a feeling of superiority from his son. This was really too shameful. Fu Yuansheng was actually trembling with fury. His well-meant intentions actually got such a payback. Get out, Ling Han said coldly to He Lin, pointing at the door. Brat, how dare you actually speak to me this way? He Lin was stunned for a moment, before becoming enraged. Both Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan had stepped out to stand in front of Ling Han, glaring furiously at He Lin. Two dogs that don't know what's good for you. He Ling humphed coldly. I was intending to leave, even if you don't drive me out. Actually watching a wet behind-the-ears brat concoct an alchemical pill, pay. Ha, ha, ha. He spat and then gave 3 loud laughs, leaving with long strides. Chapter 107. Chapter 107. 4 Forms Seal. Fu Yuansheng's face flashed with different expressions very quickly. Finally, giving a long sigh, he said, though this man is a little arrogant, he does indeed have a talent in alchemy that corresponds with his level of arrogance. I had previously thought to gift him with a rare opportunity, yet never imagined that AI. He raised his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction in apology and said, Young Master Han, please don't take his actions to heart. Ling Han smiled softly and said, It's fine. This time, because of Fu Yuansheng, he would not pursue the issue, but if He Lin dared to act so pompous in front of him again, he would definitely shatter all the teeth in the latter's mouth. Then let's begin. Fu Yuansheng had already brought all the medicinal ingredients Ling Han had requested for, and Ling Han had also taken out the second star grass. All the people here were black-grade alchemists, so how could they not recognize the second star grass? A few of them instantly looked resentful. They were actually called here to observe a young junior concoct the refreshing pill? This was practically an insult to them. Unfortunately, they did not have a father who was also a black-grade high-level alchemist. Thus, though they were slightly displeased with Fu Yuansheng's actions, they dared not express that displeasure. However, their faces had all turned a bit sour. When Zhu He Xian and Zhang Wei Shan saw the behavior of the others, both of them felt the urge to draw out their weapons to drive these people out. They actually dared to doubt young Master Han. At the same time, Zhang Wei Shan also felt a bit of shame, for he had also doubted Ling Han before. Ling Han did not bother himself with worrying over what the others were thinking. As the Alchemy Emperor, what need was there for him to obtain the respect of other alchemists? He grabbed the alchemy furnace and began to toss various medicinal ingredients into it. Does this brat actually know how to concoct alchemical pills? How can he simply toss in so many different ingredients all at once? That's right. The first step of the concoction process is purification, and different ingredients require different levels of heat to be purified. If they are all thrown in at once, the only result would be that all ingredients would be damaged. Forget it, just take it as wasting a bit of our time. A few of the alchemists present could not hold themselves back from mumbling complaints to each other quietly. It was not that they did not trust Fu Yuansheng, just that Ling Han was really too young. Moreover, in their eyes, his actions were simply too reckless. They were not the only ones feeling doubtful. Even Fu Yuansheng, Zhu Hexian, and Zhang Weishan were extremely surprised, for the purification of the medicinal ingredients was the first step to concocting an alchemical pill. It was also a very crucial step. Could it be that Ling Han would cause a mess-up from the very first step? It was really too bad that Li Xichan was not present. She had previously watched the whole process of Ling Han concocting an alchemical pill from start to finish. Purification was only a piece of cake to him. After tossing in 7 different ingredients, Ling Han's hands trembled, and instantly, flames gushed out. His figure began to circle around the furnace and struck the furnace with his palms repeatedly. Wong, 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 tong, tong, tong. From within the furnace, steam instantly gushed out. A herbal fragrance also began to spread out within the room. What? All of the alchemists in the room widened their eyes in shock at the exact same moment, expressions of absolute disbelief on their faces. They all looked as if they had just seen a ghostly apparition. Master, what's wrong with all of you? Qi Zhantai asked in confusion. She had just barely entered into the field of alchemy and had only just learnt the basic theoretical knowledge, thus she had no idea what everyone was so flabbergasted about. Gods, 7 different ingredients really can be purified at the same time. Am I dreaming? One of them gasped in shock before Zhang Weishan could manage to answer. All of these 7 ingredients require different temperatures to be purified, and it should have been impossible to purify them all at once. But this brat used a very intriguing technique. It seems like he has split a single furnace into 7 parts, and the temperature in each separate part is different, allowing for the simultaneous purification of these 7 ingredients to be possible. Amazing! They slowly regained their composure, though their faces still could not hide the admiration they were feeling. But this does not appear to have much meaning, one of the alchemists said hesitatingly after a while. After all, he was not capable of accomplishing such a feat, so the tone he used to voice out his evaluation lacked a bit of confidence. Indeed. Even Fu Yuansheng nodded. Being able to purify all 7 ingredients at the same time is indeed an amazing ability, but to purify the ingredients one by one would only expend a bit more time. He pointed out in his own evaluation. This was what would be called a flashy but useless move, for if there was even the slightest bit of a mistake in the process of purifying all 7 ingredients simultaneously, that would mean that all 7 ingredients would have gone to waste. No. Fu Yuansheng suddenly shook his head, his eyes wide. How could this herbal aroma be so strong? When he brought this up, the others all looked as if they had come to a sudden realization, and consequently looked very astonished. As black-grade alchemists, the number of times they had purified medicinal ingredients in preparation for the concoction process was uncountable. They were especially familiar with those medicinal ingredients that were frequently used in alchemy. But when they smelled this herbal aroma that was currently spreading out in the room, it was obviously very different from the aroma that was produced when they had purified ingredients in the past. The stronger the herbal aroma was, the purer the essence of the medicinal ingredients produced from the purification it indicated. Also, when the alchemist advanced to the actual concoction process, the success rate of concocting the alchemical pill would be much higher as well. It was a very simple logic. The fewer impurities there were, the less interference there would be with the actual concoction process. But the problem was that as far as these black-grade alchemists were concerned, the purification process was already improved to its limits. There was no room for even the slightest bit of improvement anymore. Yet why was it that the medicinal essence that Ling Han had obtained from his purification was so much purer than their own? Could it be that this was why all 7 ingredients had to be purified at the same time? That is the only possibility. That's right, I've heard a senior of mine tell me before that in ancient times, The really capable alchemists were able to purify various medicinal ingredients all at the same time, taking advantage of the mutual effects of the different ingredients to make it possible for the medicinal essence derived from the purification process to be even purer. Could that actually be true? Hiss. Now, everyone could no longer remain calm. Whether the purification process took a longer or shorter time was not something that anyone would really bother about. After all, it was just a bit more or a bit less time. But if it was possible to actually increase the purity of the medicinal ingredients through the purification process, that would be an astonishing feat and an immeasurably valuable contribution to the field of alchemy. All of them could not help feeling remorse secretly. Because they had all thought that there was not much significance to this step, they had missed a lot of Ling Han's moves and techniques. Thankfully, there were still a lot of ingredients left over, so Ling Han would obviously be repeating the purification process. All 9 of them opened their eyes wide, not daring to miss any single movement of Ling Han anymore. Qi Zhantai was very bored, but there were too many important people here, so she did not even dare to breathe too loudly. Ling Han was very focused. After purifying all of the ingredients, he began the concoction process of the second star pill. The technique he had used was called the four-form seal. It was very effective in controlling the heat of the flames. In his last life, this control technique was also extremely impressive and found a very widespread use in the field of alchemy at the time. Because he himself had been an alchemist in his last life, Ling Han could not bear watching the field of alchemy degrade to such an extent. Thus, he did not mind imparting relevant knowledge of alchemy at appropriate times to improve the overall level of alchemy in this age. While he continued to concoct the alchemical pill, he also spoke about the key details and features of the four-form seal. All of the alchemists present, including Fu Yuansheng himself, behaved like they were absolute newbies to the art, listening attentively to his lecture with their faces filled with utter reverence. If this scene had been witnessed by others, they would definitely go crazy. It could be argued that all of the most capable alchemists of Rain Country were gathered here, yet they were all very seriously observing a young man concocting an alchemical pill. There was indeed no age limit to learning. Whoever's capable would be the teacher. When Ling Han had finished the process of concocting the second star pill, all of the 9 alchemists were deeply engrossed in comprehending and figuring out the workings of the four-form seal. They were all sitting cross-legged on the floor. Occasionally, it would appear that they were in pensive thought, and sometimes one of them would strike at the air with a palm. They were all trying to digest as much of Ling Han's lecture as possible. "Let's go and eat some meat." Ling Han smiled faintly and picked Hunyo up. He looked very pleased, because he had managed to concoct 7 second star pills this time, and this would allow his divine sense to improve a considerable amount. Hunyo was instantly happy. Her favorite activity was eating. "I'm going too," Qi Zhantai said quickly. She was really too bored. Chapter 108. Chapter 108, Third Imperial Prince. Ling Han, carrying Hunyo in his arms, stepped out of the room with Qi Zhantai accompanying them. However, Fu Yuansheng was still a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier after all. At the very moment the group of 3 stepped out the door, he immediately came back to reality, and with a quick leap exited as well and said, "Young Master Han, are you leaving?" My role's over, so of course I'm leaving." Ling Han waved around the pill bottle that contained the 7 second star pills, looking very pleased. "Please allow me to see you off, young Master Han," Fu Yuansheng said in a very sincere tone. He was already completely convinced by Ling Han's incredible skill in alchemy. Ling Han smiled and nodded. If Fu Yuansheng wanted to see him off, that was fine with him. They walked down the stairs, and right when they reached the beginning of the stairs, a servant boy approached and said, "Pavilion Master, the third Imperial Prince expressed his wish to meet with you." "Oh." Fu Yuansheng stared blankly for a moment, then said, "I was just about to go down, so don't concern yourself with this anymore." "Understood." The servant boy nodded quickly. He had just spotted Ling Han and Qi Zhantai, which caused him to be lost for words, because they actually had Fu Yuansheng leading them downstairs, which was an extreme shock to him. That was Fu Yuansheng, one of the few most powerful and most respected people of Rain Country. The three of them soon arrived at the ground floor and saw there was a young man and woman standing there. The two of them were standing upright, showing absolutely no sign of impatience. The man and the woman both seemed to be about 25 or 26 years old. The man was quite tall and had thick, black locks. His eyes were bright and expressive, and held a penetrating gaze as if he could look into the secrets hidden in the deepest parts of the heart of anyone his gaze fell upon. The woman had a very shapely, tempting figure, able to cause any normal man's mouth to start watering. Her face was very beautiful and her skin was as fair as white jade. Her hair was actually an unusual crimson shade of fire, which granted her a very unique charm. The man was naturally the third imperial prince, Qi Fengyun. But who was this woman? Ling Han was slightly surprised, because this woman was astonishingly in gushing spring tear. In Rain Country, this kind of a small place, a martial artist that had managed to reach gushing spring tear before reaching 30 years old had indeed made an astonishing accomplishment. She definitely could be categorized as a genius. Pavilion Master. The third imperial prince performed the proper formalities of greeting an elder upon seeing Fu Yuansheng. It was true that he was an imperial prince, but even if he had inherited the throne and was crowned the emperor someday, he would still have to treat Fu Yuansheng with utmost politeness and courtesy. Zhan Tai hereby greets third elder imperial brother. Qi Zhan Tai bowed slightly to greet the third imperial prince. Wait here for a moment. Just let me see off this very honored guest first, Fu Yuansheng said, nodding at the third imperial prince. Very honored guest? The third imperial prince could not help casting his gaze at Ling Han, because there were only 3 people standing behind Fu Yuansheng. Qi Zhan Tai belonged to the royal house of the Deyuan king. So naturally, it was not possible that she would be worth such prioritized treatment from Fu Yuansheng, and who knew was too small. This young man, who was he that he was addressed by Fu Yuansheng as very honored guest, and make Fu Yuansheng actually personally see him off? That was strange. He had obviously gotten hold of all the relevant, important intel of the imperial city, so how was it possible that such an awesome character would suddenly appear out of nowhere? Please go ahead, Pavilion Master, he said quickly. As Fu Yuansheng escorted Ling Han out the door, he kept repeatedly inviting him to frequently come over and visit him at the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion before finally turning back round and leaving. He seemed to be slightly impatient, was very much in a rush to study the 4 forms seal closely. Ling Han walked together with Qi Zhan Tai, while Hu Niu waved her little hands around excitedly and kept saying, "Meet, meet, meet." That brother ahead. The third imperial prince had caught up with them. Ling Han paused and looked over at the third imperial prince and said, "Yes?" Wasn't the third imperial prince looking for Fu Yuansheng? Why had he chased after them? The answer was very simple. There has suddenly appeared a person that even Fu Yuansheng would respectfully escort in the imperial city as the third imperial prince. He would of course want to get to know this kind of person at the first opportunity. One had to understand that the Rain Emperor had 17 sons in total. Out of these 17 sons, there were at least 5 that were qualified to compete for the throne. The third imperial prince would naturally befriend capable people with utmost patience in order to accumulate a power base for the day when he would be joining in the competition for the throne. I am Qi Fengyun. If I may ask, could you tell me your respected name, brother? The third imperial prince behaved in an extraordinarily polite manner. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "My name is Ling Han. Brother Ling, I still have some matters to deal with, so it is really not convenient for me to talk too long. I hope that Brother Ling will accept this item as a gift from me. I believe that, in this imperial city, a lot of people would give you a bit of face because of this item." The third imperial prince handed over a violet-shaped badge. "Thank you." Ling Han did not make any pretenses of modesty and accepted the badge from the third imperial prince. "Brother Ling, when I am done dealing with these matters, I will definitely seek you out for a chat," the third imperial prince said, raising his clasped hands in Ling Han's direction before once again leaving in a rush with that beauty behind him. Ling Han smiled as he weighed the badge in his hand and placed it into his pocket. "Ling Han, this is a token of the third imperial prince. According to the rumors, The holder of this badge can eat at any restaurant of the Imperial City and not pay a single cent. Everything will be paid for by the third Imperial Prince, Qi Zhantai said enviously. Ling Han was stunned for a short moment before suddenly breaking out into loud laughter. Qi Zhantai was curious, so naturally asked him why he had laughed. I think that the third Imperial Prince will definitely regret this, Ling Han said. Why? Because there's a real glutton right here, Ling Han said as he rubbed Hunyo's head. Qi Zhantai was still baffled. Hunyo was just a little girl. Even if she ate from morning to night, how much could she eat? There really are good people in this world, Ling Han said ruefully. The three of them left to have a meal at a restaurant. When she saw Hunyo's terrifying appetite, Qi Zhantai finally began to worry about that clansman of hers. There was a real chance that Qi Fengyun would be driven to poverty at the rate that Hunyo ate. Huyang Academy, Feng Luo's room. Bastard! 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 Wei He-lu was pacing around in the room like a maniac, his eyes bloodshot, looking very surly. He finally stopped pacing and said to Feng Luo, "Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Headmaster Wu actually expelled me from the alchemy department." Feng Luo's mouth twitched a few times. This was not the first time that Wei He-lu had complained and grumbled to him. He counted internally this should be the 37th, or was it the 38th time? Previously, he would still offer a bit of response and comfort Wei He-lu a bit, but now he was completely not in the mood for it. Having lost Wu Songlin's regard, a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist naturally would not be someone looked upon too seriously by him. It's all because of that bastard, that damn brat. Wei He-lu's eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. He had been so glorious, able to boast and basking in the spotlight as a genius of alchemy. Even those from the royal or noble families had to treat him politely and with courtesy. But now, it was as if he had dropped down from this extremely high position all the way to the bottom of the pit. His future was bleak and dark. A person who had been chased out by Wu Songlin, what alchemist would still dare to take him in as a disciple? Moreover, alchemy skill depended very much on imparted knowledge. If it was simply dependent on self-learning, what could he even manage to accomplish? Which meant that he was completely done for. Feng Luo saw all this happen, and could not hold back a cold smile from turning up the corners of his lips before saying, "Young Master Wei, I have a suggestion that would really cause some serious trouble for that brat." He had lost a considerable number of teeth, so he was forced to speak with a lisp now. One had to cautiously decipher his words before being able to understand what he was trying to say. "Oh, what suggestion would that be?" Wei He-lu immediately turned to look at him. The current him had lost practically everything, so he had become absolutely crazy. As long as he could get his revenge on Ling Han, he was willing to do whatever insane thing it was. "Here, it's this." Feng Luo took out a badge carved in the shape of a violet. "What's this?" Wei He-lu said blankly. "This is a token of the third Imperial Prince," Feng Luo said with a very devious smirk. "This is something that the third Imperial Prince gifted to my brother. Tell me, if I said I lost this badge, yet this badge was discovered in Ling Han's place, how would the Academy deal with him? And how would the third Imperial Prince react?" Wei He-lu's eyes lit up in understanding. Frame Ling Han. Chapter 109. Chapter 109. Framed. Ha 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 ha. Theft is an evil, shameless act in the first place. What more when it actually involves the third Imperial Prince? Wei He-lu could not hold himself back from laughing. At that time, even if the Academy had no intention of pursuing the matter further, due to the involvement of the Imperial family, even Wu Songlin's reputation would be of no use. Anything related to the Imperial family was never small, and Ling Han actually dared to steal an item belonging to the third Imperial Prince. That was a definite pathway to death. However, there should still be a reason, right? Otherwise, what would a thief steal this thing for? Wei He-lu asked, his laughter very quickly stopping. Feng Luo snickered and said, "This is a token of the third Imperial Prince that he has only gifted to a rare few people. The holder of this token would be considered as a dear friend of the third Imperial Prince. It is not only a symbol of status and identity, It also means that all charges the holder incurred at any restaurant or inn in the Imperial City would all be placed on the third Imperial Prince's tab. Yeah. Wei Hila looked extremely envious. Although he was a genius of alchemy, he had not managed to obtain the third Imperial Prince's favor and wasn't gifted with such a priceless token. Now actually seeing a profligate, spoiled young master holding onto one, how could he not be envious? Feng Luo smiled very proudly. This was given to him by Feng Yin, who had feared that his little brother would get into trouble in the Imperial City. If Feng Luo possessed a token of the third Imperial Prince, then no matter who it was, they would have to give the third Imperial Prince some face. He patted Wei Hili's shoulder and said, "Young Master Wei, the task of framing Ling Han would be your job." Me? Wei Hila looked troubled at this. He only knew how to concoct alchemical pills, play around and show off, but framing someone was something he had never done before. Moreover, in the past, there were too many people who wanted to curry his favor, so no matter what job he wanted done, he only needed to say it, and there would be someone willing to do that job for him. When had he ever needed to personally do anything? What is it? Are you not willing? Feng Luo smiled coldly. He pretended to put away the token, then just forget about it. I just wanted to help you vent your anger in the first place, but since you're unwilling to do it, then I will not force you either. Wait. Wei Hilu hurriedly called out, gritted his teeth, and said, I'll do it. He was extremely embittered in his heart. He had offended Ling Han, but wasn't it all because he had stood up for Feng Luo? But now this guy actually said he wanted to help him vent his anger, and then he was really turning his back on him. Absolutely heartless. But after he had been abandoned by Wu Songlin, he was no longer the young Master Wei of old, but only a mere yellow-grade low-level alchemist. What right did he have to go against Feng Luo? Feng Luo had a genius of martial arts standing behind him that could vaguely be close to the level of absolute geniuses like the Third Imperial Prince and Kan Yi. Because of his brother, Feng Luo's own future prospects would be immeasurable. How was a down-and-out alchemist like him supposed to compare with that? Due to his current dire circumstances, Wei Hilu could only bow his head in acquiescence. If he dared to refuse Feng Luo now, that would mean cutting off his only chance for a bright future. If he followed after Feng Luo, he could possibly leave Rain Country in the future, and thus get out of Wu Songlin's shadow. He accepted the violet-shaped badge and silently walked to Feng Luo's side. His hands were lowered at his sides, obviously placing his position at a lower level than the latter. Ha 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 ha. Feng Luo laughed loudly, his face filled with pride. Even his brother had never thought that he would be able to take a slightly talented alchemist into his camp, had he? Let's see who dared to still say that he was a spoiled young master. Why don't you try taking in a yellow-grade alchemist to show your own ability? Wei Hilu lowered his head, his eyes filled with hatred and regret. But things have already advanced to this step. There was no way he would be able to return things to how they were before. After enjoying a meal with Ling Han, Qi Zhantai naturally returned to the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion, while Ling Han brought Hun Yo for another walk around the shops and bought some materials to set up the restrictions around his courtyard. He then returned to the academy. He was now not in much of a rush to take the second star pill. His priority now was to set up certain restrictions in the surrounding area of his courtyard. This was an early warning system. If anyone intruded into the courtyard, they would definitely disturb the restrictions in place, which would then release an alarm that only he could sense. Even if he was not in the room, there would still be clues left behind that would tell him that an intruder had broken into his courtyard. There was nothing to be done about it. He had very limited materials on hand, so he could only set up such simple restrictions. If it was in his last life, possibly not even powerful warriors of Heaven tier would dare to barge through the restrictions he could set up. I'll just have to make use of whatever is available to me. I don't have any enemies now anyways, he murmured. If Lu Yutong, Qi Yongyi, and the others had heard his words, they would definitely jump out in objection. No enemies? He really dared to say that. Hu Bo was one, Feng Yin was another, He Junshan could also be considered as one, and there was also Nangong Ji. All these people were not easily trifled with, especially Hu Bo and Feng Yin. Hu Bo was a young master of the main line of the Hu clan, and Feng Yin was a genius of martial arts that had the potential to become a ruler. If these people were still not considered enemies, then who would Ling Han actually consider enemies? Unfortunately, they did not know that while Ling Han's current cultivation level was very weak, there was still the pride of a powerful warrior of heaven tier in his bones. How could he actually take these small rascals seriously? Furthermore, in his last life, he had the same kind of attitude, possessing a deep-set pride within him. He would never bow his head to anyone. The restriction was extremely simple, so Ling Han did not expend too much time on setting it up. After that, he swallowed a second star pill and began to strengthen his divine sense. From what Ling Han knew, there was no cultivation technique in this world that could strengthen divine sense. Only when the cultivation level rises would a martial artist's divine sense advance to the next level. This was a very passive process. For example, when he was still in heaven tier in his last life, his soul only needed to tremble slightly, and he could even directly erase the soul of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. But he had always suspected that since divine sense could be recovered through cultivation techniques and strengthened with the use of alchemical pills or divine medicine, then it should also be possible to cultivate divine sense through cultivation techniques. The only thing was that this kind of cultivation technique was not discovered yet. This was not impossible. After all, if it was not for the fact that he had come from 10,000 years in the past, how would he have known that there were so many pill formulae that had been lost in the passage of time now? Obviously, there is a lot of good stuff that has been lost on the pages of history. Since it was like this in his current lifetime, then how could his last life be an exception to this theory? A very real example was seen from the very last period of his last life, when he had visited various ancient historical sites from which he had obtained a few ancient pill formulae, which could all be considered to belong to the category of lost with time. Thus, perhaps many, many years ago, there may have been a cultivation technique that was meant to refine one's divine sense. As he pondered, he was still absorbing the medicinal effects of the second star pill. He suddenly felt very comfortable, for the soul was responsible for all the feelings and sensations of the body. Now that his divine sense was strengthened, he would of course feel an indescribable invigoration. One after another, very soon, he had taken all 7 second star pills. My soul is almost twice as strong now. Ling Han's eyes snapped open. His eyes had become even deeper than before, as if they were twin bottomless pits, causing anyone who looked into his eyes unable to help but fall deeply into them. He smiled. This is a benefit of strengthening my divine sense. Using my divine sense to dominate over my opponent could be considered as my unique move. If my opponent has no defense against this kind of attack, then there is a high chance that I could kill him in an instant. The current strength of my soul should be equivalent to the cultivation level of gushing spring tier. His smile grew wider. This means that I would be able to absorb spiritual chi at the rate of a martial artist of gushing spring tier for my cultivation, and together with my immortal grade spirit base, the rate of advance of my cultivation level would probably shock even me. I have to quickly reach gushing spring tier. Only when I have reached gushing spring tier will I be able to practice black grade cultivation techniques. That is the real beginning to the path of martial arts. Now, I am filled with advanced, high-level knowledge, yet have no ability to make use of what I have. This kind of feeling is really horrible. A rat is sneaked in. Chapter 110. Chapter 110. Dropping in. Ling Han really had not thought that this would happen. He had just barely set up the restriction around his courtyard, and he already had a night visitor coming in for a visit. One has to understand that the place he was occupying now could actually be considered a haunted house, a place no one would be living in. If one argued that there so happened to be a burglar who had no understanding of the inner workings of the academy and somehow stumbled onto this place to commit theft, then the possibility of this happening was really too low. Who could this thief be? Russell, Hunyo suddenly stood up. She had the alert senses of a wild beast. Her nose might be even more powerful than a dog's, and she may have already caught the scent of the thief. Shoo! Ling Han gestured her to stay quiet. He had no desire to scare off the thief. He wanted to know why the latter had come first. Hunyo was firmly ensconced in his hold, and she immediately became quiet. However, her eyes still brimmed with a baleful look. In her beast-like way of looking at the world, this was her territory, and anyone who dared to trespass whoever it was should be bitten to death. A dark figure made their way inside, yet did not move around everywhere. They only walked around the living room once before fumbling about a table a few times. After a while, the intruder turned around and left quietly. A sliver of a smile crossed the corners of Ling Han's lips. At the instant the intruder had left, Ling Han had taken advantage of the moonlight to clearly see the face of the intruder. Wei-Lu. Ling Han walked into the living room, lit a candle, and approached the table. There was a wooden box on the table, and inside lay a few cheap little trinkets. When he opened the box, he saw that there was something new within. A badge carved in the shape of a violet. This is... Ling Han could not hold back a strange smile as he took out another violet-shaped badge from within his pocket. This had been gifted to him by the third imperial prince. Now he had two such badges. Why had Wei-Lu secretly stuffed a violet badge into his hands? Oh! Instantly, he understood what was going on here. This was an attempt to set him up. There would definitely be someone who would be reporting having lost the item, and Wei-Lu would lead people to his place. Naturally, they would find the lost item here, and by that time, there was no way he would be able to escape being accused of theft. Moreover, the stolen item was even a token of the third imperial prince. No one would dare to suppress this issue, and by that time, the lightest punishment he would get would be expulsion from the academy, but it was another story whether the third imperial prince would send his own people to deal with him or not. The unfortunate thing was that Wei-Lu would never have imagined that he would have coincidentally encountered the third imperial prince today. He had even been presented with a violet badge from the latter. However, even if he had not met the third imperial prince today, since he had discovered the existence of this scheme, there was no way that he could still be successfully set up. Since you want to play, then I'll play with you a bit. Ling Han smiled calmly and replaced the lid of the box, having no intention at all to remove that badge from within. A cold gleam flashed through his eyes. Since there was someone who wanted to die so desperately, then he would just have to let him die. He returned to the inner chambers and began cultivation. After his divine sense had been strengthened, the efficiency of his cultivation had risen to a whole new level. As massive amounts of spiritual qi gushed into him, it was all absorbed by his 5 elements mixed chaos lotus, and with the strict control granted to him by his powerful divine sense, this spiritual qi was swiftly converted into origin power to strengthen his origin nuclei. Originally, I would have needed around a month to rise to the next layer, but with how things are now, probably half a month would be enough, Ling Han smiled. After his divine sense was completely exhausted, he began to cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll in order to advance from body of dead tree to body of rock cliff. When he has completely grasped body of rock cliff, he'd be able to parry sharp weaponry with his bare hands. The sturdiness of his physical body would become even more terrifying than that of some races with exceptionally powerful natural defense. When he had finished cultivation, there had already appeared a sliver of white in the east. It was only now that he lay down to rest. Meditation could substitute for a part of the sleep he needed. Thus, he only needed to sleep for 1 or 2 hours, and it would be enough for him to be energetic for the rest of the day. When dawn came the next day, he went over to Imo Gao's courtyard to discuss the art of the sword with him again. One of them was an expert in the art of the sword, while the other had an exceptionally high level of comprehension, and so naturally they would be able to use each other as reference and thus improve themselves. They had only experienced 2 discussions with each other, yet the benefits both had received were quite deep. Pong pong pong. Just when the 2 of them were embroiled in a fierce discussion, they heard someone banging on the door which rudely interrupted their conversation. Imo Gao suddenly looked extremely displeased. His fondness for the art of the sword had almost reached the level of insanity. Once he was embroiled in a discussion about sword techniques, even if it was the gods themselves here for a visit, he would ignore them. He walked over to the entrance, opened the door, and saw that there were over 10 people standing at his doorway. Is Ling Han here? A young man dressed in green-colored long robes took 1 step forward, his chin proudly raised. looking extremely arrogant in his demeanor. However, he did have the right to be arrogant, for he was astonishingly in gushing spring tier, a much more powerful martial artist than even Imo Gao. "Who are you people, and what are you looking for my student for?" Imo Gao questioned instead of stepping out of their way and allowing them entry. "Teacher Imo, we are members of the discipline committee." Another young man dressed in black walked forwards, though his tone was much more even. Of course, this had something to do with his cultivation level, because he was similarly in element gathering tier, so he did not have much of an advantage over Imo Gao in terms of cultivation level. "Don't speak so much nonsense. Tell Ling Han to come out quickly." The young man in green robes shouted impatiently, with no hint of caring about Imo Gao. Imo Gao stared blankly for a moment, and then said, "What offense has my student committed that requires the discipline committee to take action?" The discipline committee, as the name suggested, was an organization that was in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations of the academy. However, the majority of the members of this committee were students, and it could also be considered as a type of part-time job, for the members could earn academic points. Moreover, the members also possessed a considerable amount of power in the academy, so quite a lot of students desperately thought up ways to squeeze themselves into the committee. "We suspect that he is involved with a crime of theft, so there is a need for us to search him and his room." "Teacher Imo, you aren't thinking of covering for a criminal, are you?" The green-clad young man said coldly, showing no respect to Imo Gao at all. "Nonsense!" Imo Gao was instantly enraged. In his heart, the sword was the most sacred existence in this world, and Ling Han had such a high talent in the art of the sword. The sword would reflect the swordsman's heart. How could such a person be a thief? "Get lost." He raised his hand and pointed at them furiously, almost about to draw his sword in ire. "Imo Gao, even if you're a teacher of the academy, you still have no right to cover for a criminal," the green-clad young man said, his eyes passing over Imo Gao to look into the courtyard. "Get out of my way, or else I will apprehend you on the basis of obstructing law enforcement." Imo Gao was so angry his whole body was shaking. He was a teacher of the academy, yet he was actually now berated and insulted by a mere student. His right hand was already lying on the hilt of his sword, a cold light shining from his eyes, ready to make his move. "Teacher Imo." Ling Han walked over to them, smiled softly at Imo Gao, and said, "Since they're here to look for me, then just let me deal with this matter." Imo Gao hesitated for a moment, but still lowered his right hand from the hilt of his sword. He would of course not simply watch as his own student was bullied by others, but he too wanted to know what was really going on here. Ling Han's eyes swept over the entourage, and a smile of realization played about his lips. In this group of over 10 people, he had recognized 2 of them to be Feng Luo and Wei He Lu. He opened his mouth to say, "These 2 should not be members of the discipline committee, right?" "They are indeed not, for they are the ones who reported the loss," the green-clad young man said, his eyes fixed in a stare at Ling Han. "Let me advise you not to have any delusions. In front of me, there is no one who can conceal their crime." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.